Whoa, that music was insane. New pig face for you there at the top of the hour. Welcome. That was not the new pig face. Oh, see, someone's gonna. Yeah, I heard the new pig face, and it sounded kind of chill. Hey, Jason. Hey, Greg. Hey, Tom, Doro, Pam. Hello, everyone. Hey, Fred. Um, so welcome to MMX4. Wow. Okay. MMX4. I'm just getting used to my reverse screen. This is kind of a highlight. Traditionally, MMX has been absolutely an all-dayer. I remember, when was the last one we did, Molly? Was it May? No, November. I sat down here about 11 o'clock in the morning and I stood up about 8:30. Like, oh! So what we've done with our students from Millikin University in Decatur, Illinois, this is something we do at the end of 4 years of university. They get to choose guests and put this together. This semester is a little bit different and difficult. Lots of things going on, and we decided just to kind of recap the first 3 MMXs. And actually, we've got some great stuff, but it's half of the highlights. So we've got great stuff from Wendy Day, Daryl Hers from Indie Week in Toronto. They've done 19 or 20 Indie Weeks up there. And Daryl's just a great guy who's always happy to share his own personal situation and feelings, as well as the professional side of things. Lol Tolhurst, one of the founding members of The Cure. We had a terrific hour with him about a year ago. Eddie Sanders, attorney at large here in Chicago, has a session. Randy Blythe, the singer from Lamb of God and also from my band Pigface, did a great session with us. That Randy is several years sober. I don't know the exact amount of years. And it was great to talk to him about these struggles that lots of us have. Add 2, a rapper from here in Chicago, and as good as he is doing that, his Jim Crow album t-shirt is right behind me. He's also a mentor to students at a place called The Haven, 47th and King Drive here in Chicago. So we have a great session with him. Ace Peaver from Over the Bridge in Toronto gets about 20 minutes to talk about health and wellness in the music business. Some really good stuff from him. And wow, if this was an album, I'd buy it. Galen Lee, of course, disability rights spokesperson, amazing musician. I was talking with somebody yesterday about her music and kind of just music in general. And we're all smart people. We can all look and go, why did I react to this? What's going on here? What's my motivation? What's my trigger? Boom, boom, boom. But when I listen to Galen sing anyway, I just want to cry. Just poof, just punches me in the heart and like opens up some stuff. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Jesse. I hope you're feeling better. I was worried about you yesterday. I hope you're feeling good, Jesse. And then we end today's, now that's what I call MMX, best of greatest hits, with the amazing Michael Anthony Alago, whose book is called I Am Michael Anthony Alago. Is that what it's called, Molly? Okay. His book is great. He signed Metallica when he was 23 or 24. Like either is kind of fantastic. Has had a career at a very high level as A&R producer, in the music business. He worked with Nina Simone on her last album. The chapter in the book describing his time with Nina Simone, who just invited him into her bubble bath, as you do. It's a terrific scene in the book, and Michael is just a ball of energy. And I think several students described the session with Michael as not life-changing, but kind of career focus changing. Like, really? That's how you started? They just kind of, it changed their perspective about how they're going to go about their lives in the music business. So I'm not sure how this works, if the chat will be going as we're broadcasting the sessions. I'm here. I think Molly has to unshare my screen. Hey, Mac, one of our students. Mac just jumped in. And hey, Jesse, okay. I was just asking Jesse if he was okay, and Jesse is much better. Thanks. Good deal, man. I have to talk to you about your drum setup at some point. Perhaps this isn't the forum to do that. So anyway, hunker down, take notes, and thanks again to our students at Millikin University for doing the last 3 of these over the last 2 years and coming together to make this one happen today, and to Shani Goss at Goss Advertising for making every one of these look just kick-ass. I don't think I would have ever have suggested an elephant on a bicycle with a speaker cabinet strapped to its back as a logo, but I love it. It's perfect, and she is awesome. So let's jump in to our first session, which is with Wendy Day. And if you don't know about Wendy, I think she is credited with negotiating the largest record deal in rap history, the Cash Money Records deal. I think she is universally acknowledged as the person who discovered or got Eminem signed. She is 100% awesome for all the right reasons. She's helping artists in the rap community get out of their onerous deals, I think you might say. But let's sit down with Wendy Day for 20 minutes, and Molly Kruger put a link to Wendy's book in the chat there, and let's have a listen to Wendy.
My name is Wendy Day, and I run a bunch of companies, but I'm probably best known for Rap Coalition, which is an advocacy organization for rappers. And what we do is when an artist is in an oppressive or unfair deal, whether it's with a major label or a production company or a manager, we step in and we break that contract, and we do it at no cost to the artist. I've been doing that for 28 years. It's not my favorite thing that I do, but it's so necessary. My favorite thing that I do is educating artists. So I do a lot of webinars. I post a lot of content on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram channel, on my Facebook page. I'm really, really, really proactive about artists understanding how the music business works and how to make money with their music. So those 2 areas are the not-for-profit side of what I do. I'm in the process of building out a website now that will educate artists hopefully thoroughly, and that should be up by the fall. I'm pretty excited about that. I don't have a name for it yet, so if anybody wants to suggest some names, woohoo, I would love the help. And then I also am a consultant to artists that already have investors on board, and my team and I, we help them make money with their music, and we do it in a hands-on fashion. So that's the for-profit side of what I do. And then I'm in the process of building out an incubator or accelerator, if you want to call it that, for artists that have some funding but don't have enough funding to really do this properly. We're going to bring them into our incubator and accelerator and grow them and teach them how to do this very hands-on. And then once we push them out of the nest, they will retain 100% ownership and 100% of all income, all publishing, all rights are theirs. So I'm really excited about that. And that should be up and running. I'm in the funding portion of that right now. So that should be up and running hopefully by January of 2021.
Wow. How has this lockdown, the virus, this time, how has that affected your business specifically, but also the business that you're in? How you're in Atlanta, yes, right? How are you seeing things there, and how are you seeing the nuts and bolts of the business there? How are people dealing with it?
Absolutely. So I'm gonna answer them in the order that you asked them, and I'll preface this by saying that I work in rap and pop, mostly in rap. So I'm going to speak towards the rap side of it, okay, right? I hate that people are dying, but I love this. I've been in my house now for 8 weeks straight. I'm an introvert, so it's been heaven for me. It has forced me to stop taking meetings in person, which are very time consuming. It's enabled me to use Zoom, which we're all using today, which is a wonderful platform. I can do meetings now instead of only being able to do 8 meetings a day or 10 meetings a day. I can do 20 or 30, which is really kind of amazing. Not that I'm bragging about that because that's just insane, but I've accomplished so much for my clients and for my business and myself personally. And you can probably relate to this, you meaning everybody that's watching this. We tend to focus on putting out fires all day, every day. So we don't really ever get to do our to-do list of stuff around the house or things to make our own businesses better. And I've had the opportunity to do that for 8 weeks, and it's just amazing. I was also invited to write a column at Forbes magazine. So I'm going to be writing for Forbes.com, which is super amazing because it's a magazine that I read and love.
Wow.
So wow. I'm so excited. That I can say about this, even though I know a lot of artists can't tour and can't make money, my clients have all pivoted so that they're making money through their merchandise. They're doing live shows online. They've all kind of pivoted to making money other than through live shows, which is where most new artists start to make their money first. So I'm really proud of them. Like, they're all doing well. Even the guys that were struggling a little bit pre-COVID are doing well now because the fans have all, I should say the rap fans have all gone to social media and the internet. So they're able to reach them through Facebook ads and Google ads better than ever, YouTube ads better than ever. So I'm pretty excited by that.
Anybody, are you seeing, God, this sounds like it should be a t-shirt. I was thinking yesterday, I don't know if you saw the bags that we're doing where you can pay what
Yes.
you want for this bag. It felt to me like a Nipsey moment. Yeah. I was thinking yesterday, like, what would Nipsey do? You know, do you see people going the extra mile, or do you see people just failing at it?
I see people pivoting like positively. And, you know, for those watching that are looking for direction right now, you know, I have always preached to do a large portion of work online and then still go out into the real world and market and promote like to people. And because we can't really do that right now, we're not quite at that point. I'm just explaining to artists that the best thing you can do right now is run digital ads. So, you know, either learn how to run Google ads and Facebook ads and YouTube ads and influencer marketing through Instagram and influencer marketing through TikTok is a really great way to reach new people and go live as much as you can, not just to perform, but to really give people a sense of who you are. Because when you go into the real world and you market and promote, that's what is beneficial. It's not just the being able to touch somebody physically, but it's them being able to see who you are and what you think and how you feel. Sort of like what you and I just did, where you asked me, hey, Wendy, what do you think of the COVID pandemic and how it's affecting you? You know, everybody watching this got a really good feel of how I feel about it and what I think. And there are people that will have some emotion sparked by that. Either they'll really hate what I just said, or they'll relate to it because it's like, oh shit, she got to get some of her stuff done around the house on her to-do list. So did I. Yeah, that's right. And it gives a contact point, not a physical contact point, but a point of understanding and similarity, and emotion and passion to your fans, and where people can see the similarities between you and them. And I think that that's so important when you're talking about who you are. I think that behind the scenes content, especially in rap, is so important. We want to know who are we listening to. It's almost as important as the music. We want to know, like, what does this person think? What are their belief systems? And it comes back to what you and I were talking about in the beginning, comparing Morrissey to Robert Smith, where you said, yeah, somehow Morrissey got real white right wing and went, off the deep end. Fans care about that stuff. They care about, what are Jay-Z's political views, but they also care, what is new artist XYZ? What are their political views? What do they stand for? What are they thinking? What's their life? How did they come up? Where did they go to school? What are their parents like? Do they have parents? And people really want to hear the stories. And the great thing about the internet and right now is people have time to listen to the stories, and they want to hear the stories. They want that escape to be able to focus on something other than what's going on in their immediate surroundings.
I think it almost feels to me like artists who've been doing stuff have almost an unfair advantage. It's one of the reasons I love teaching music business, because I don't know if there's any students on here or parents of students, but I'm not teaching music business so that you can go and be an A&R person, which may or may not exist anymore, with an expense account, which absolutely doesn't exist anymore, in Los Angeles, and sign bands. I teach music business because if you're doing stuff, you learn how to pivot. And it's like, if you're touring, the wheels exploded, the club doesn't exist, it's not all ages, you've got diarrhea, there's no sound system. It's like, okay, how are we going to make this work? And I found myself just going to my toolkit of looking for the silver lining is kind of a hallmark way of putting it, but just making sure that something keeps happening is a more practical way of looking at it. And I know that some people are like, oh my goodness, this is this calamitous situation. I'm like, oh, for me, it's a Tuesday. It's just like, what are we going to do?
Yes.
What's the silver lining? And just like you, I've spent a crazy amount of time working on my next book, which I would never have spent the time. I would have banged it out from the back of the Pigface tour bus,
in between stops, exactly.
And it would have just been, it wouldn't have been what it could be.
Exactly.
So
can I share something with you that I've learned? Like I learned this in life. I didn't learn this from being trapped in my house. But one of the people that I've learned from, his name is Jack Canfield, and he wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. And, he reminds me so much of you because he's so positive, and he's just always like working and coming up with these great ideas of how to, you know, get more people involved, not because he's trying to make money and sell something, but because he's got a message to deliver and he just wants people on board with that message. And I asked him one day, I'm like, you know, how did Chicken Soup for the Soul become so successful? You know, because it became its own franchise and it made billions of dollars. And his, like, he thought about it for a minute and he said, you know, Wendy, it's because we did something every day to succeed. He's like, there was not one day, like, we didn't take off weekends, we didn't take off evenings. Like, every day we did one thing, at least one thing, to move the product forward. And I love that, because I took from that and I'm like, okay, every day I'm going to do at least one thing. And there's some days where I'll do 50 things, you know, but every day I do at least one thing to move the brand forward and to help people get to where they need to be. And I think that that is so important. As an artist, if you're going to have a career in music, you've got to do at least one thing every day, not musically, but to market and promote yourself so that you can share your great music. And the music has to be great, but to share your great music with the world.
Right. And that, so there are a bunch of questions, Wendy.
Fire away. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. I'm just going to go through them.
Please.
If it's bullshit, say bullshit pass next. What are ways you can pay videographers on your label or your team when it comes to official video views?
First of all, you shouldn't buy views. It's not conducive to building a successful career. You've actually got to put the videos out and then spend the money on marketing and promoting the videos to get real views. Because the people that are, and ditto for your social media, because the people that are following you are the ones that you're going to depend upon to buy your merch and stream your music. And once this thing goes live again, where we can go out and tour, they're the people that we're going to want to let know that we're in their town. And if you've got a bunch of bots or fake followers that you bought just to make your ego feel kind of good, when your message goes out there, it's going to be falling on deaf ears. So you really want to make sure that the people that are following you are real and able to vote with their dollars as to whether they want to support you or not.
Right. Absolutely. Bots don't buy shirts.
Not only do bots not buy shirts, but the way the algorithm works, and I'm not going to get all geeky and boring, but when you put something up on social media like Facebook or Instagram, it doesn't go out to all your followers. Like, I've got 50,000 followers. When I post something, it doesn't go to all 50,000. It goes to a very small percentage of them. And then if they engage with it, it goes a little wider. And if the engagement's good, it goes a little wider. And if the engagement's really good, then it goes on to the discovery page, the front page, right? But you have to remember that social media was set up not so that we could post cool pictures of our breakfast. It was set up to make money for Instagram and Facebook and whoever. So they're looking for you to promote your posts. So their goal is not to have all 50,000 of my followers see me post a rest in peace to Andre Harrell. Their goal is to give it to a few, and then if people engage, give it to a few more. If I have bots, then my engagement is even less than what Instagram and Facebook are allowing. So I'm fucked in the gate if I'm not able to reach a good portion of real people, because there won't be any engagement and my post will just die.
Right. And there's a guy I love called Andy Cernovitz. He was involved with word of mouth marketing. And I love this phrase.
Oh, word of mouth is our goal.
He said, advertising is the cost of being boring. Bam.
Wow.
Like, right before, yeah. Before, right, and you know, when we did the bags a week ago, when people knew we're giving money to different causes and you could get these bags, you know, and then I put individual addressed signed notes in surprise notes and candy and all these
Yes.
bags to everyone. People just spread that shit. They love
Yes.
that shit. And uh, and if you can find that virality, oh God, what did I just use that word? If you can find that, people will do that. If you find that, people will do it. If something isn't worth sharing, it's not worth sharing.
And that's the goal. Like we want shareability. In a perfect world, we don't want to pay money to get people to look at us as artists. We want to put something out that's so unique or so different or so weird or so extreme, whether negative or positive, that it incites people to get passionate and share it with their friends. Yeah. And I try to remember that whenever my clients are shooting videos, because that's really the best place for that to happen. People love sharing videos and photos. It's just intrinsic. So if you can make a video that isn't the typical standard boring video, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can just be really creative and have people be like, wow, I'm so blown away by that I want to show my circle of friends, hey, look what I just found. Isn't this great?
It appears you have a smaller artist try and create a buzz in a marketplace first, consisting of 2 to 7 states. Is that based on their style of music, which region likes the sound, or on where they live, makes local support and touring cheaper? Would you elaborate on how you choose that marketplace and how to attack it?
Yes, I'm going to answer that 2 ways, because what you're really asking me is what you should do, not what I do. So what you should do is, if the sound of the music that you're making is being embraced by people around you, you should start in your area. If you live in New York City, then that was just really bad advice, because it's so expensive to market and promote to New York City that you're going to have to go out and around New York first and then come back into the nucleus. So you're going to want to hit Boston. You're going to want to hit cities in Connecticut. You're going to want to hit Philadelphia. You're going to want to hit Pittsburgh. You're going to want to kind of go around New York City. What I do is I do a bunch of research. I look at artists that have a similar sound to the artist that I'm about to work, and I actually buy research that tells me what their target market is so that I can get a really good feel. If the artist is, and this is only something that experience can tell you, so don't sit there and kick yourself because you don't know this, but if I have an artist that makes very pop radio friendly music, I'm going to start them in the Southeast because that's the easiest place to garner radio play. And I only know that from experience. How often to place Google ads? And we place Google ads constantly. We set up a budget. So we decide ahead of time, do we want to spend $30 a day, $5 a day, $300 a day? We figure out what our budget is and then we place them. And I hire somebody to do this. I don't do it myself, but I'm going to tell you that I have gone through all of Google's free online information. I wanted to learn how to do it so that when I hired folks to do it, I would know if they were delivering or not. And I would be able to speak the language to them so that when they told me about A/B testing, I would know what that was. When they talked about price per click, I knew what that was. So I recommend that you learn how to do it. But then if you're going to take this route, if you're not a pro at it, definitely bring on somebody that's affordable who is, because you can lose a lot of money advertising to people that aren't your market. You got to really understand this.
I mean, here we are, right? A/B testing. Like, what the fuck? Right? And it's beautiful. Basically, you put a couple of, it's all about your subject line. And I think MailChimp will automatically for you. Do I say, Wendy Day, come and chat, or rap, whatever, free pop, I don't know. And if you don't know which subject line to use, you can tell MailChimp, I've got 25,000 people on my mailing list, test this with 3,000 people and use the most effective one for the other 22,000. It's stunning. There are people, as Wendy says, there are people doing amazing stuff with marketing, just like the guy you want programming your beats or running the lights. There's amazing people.
Martin, I see
So
somebody else asked, is there such a thing as too much content? And yes, you can burn out and
yeah,
oversaturate. The thing about content is it's more about consistency. So I always make sure that I have a schedule. So for me, it would be like maybe Wild Out Wednesdays
yeah,
or Sappy Sundays. I would have different content that I post on at a certain time on a certain day of the week, or even if it's once a month, like whatever I'm doing, I want to make sure it's the consistency that I'm focusing on. And I also try not to be too promotion-y. So I do a 70-30 ratio, so that out of 10 of my posts, 3 of them might be promoting something and 7 of them are just pure content where you're learning more about me and seeing behind the scenes what I'm doing and what I'm
the best way to get a job as a label as an A&R person is to find and develop an artist. I know what I
Yes and yes and yes and no. Understand that the label A&Rs, at least in urban music, are all looking at stats. So they're looking at chart metric, they're looking at sound charts. They want to see real numbers. They want to see what you're doing in different areas. So if you're going to find and develop talent on your own, help them make money. If your goal is to get a deal, that's wonderful, but you can make more money finding and developing talent and helping people get ahead on your own than you can working for Def Jam or Sony. A&R is the most coveted position, and it's really a numbers game now. And most labels, they hire interns, and you've got to be a college student to be an intern, and you've got to be willing to work for free. And when I say work, I mean like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then that's where they go to bring people into their fold, because now they understand that corporate culture. And it's more about the numbers in the corporate culture than it is about finding talent.
and I think that for a band that wants to get signed or somebody who wants to work at a label, I think the trick is to not need the gig. If you
Absolutely.
need to be signed, you're fucked. It's when you're running your own business that you're actually way more attractive to the people who you. Those people aren't going to solve your basic business problem. You have to solve those yourself. Once you solve them and start to grow, then all of these other entities can help you grow.
Martin, I think there's a lot of confusion in the music industry that talent is hard to find, and it's not. Labels don't need you to find them talent. They need you to find them ways to make money. It's really a business, and it's all about the money. So if you want to become important to a label, find a way for them to make millions of dollars and hand it to them for free, because that's really what they want.
I like to say you don't get what you think you deserve. You get what you gouge. You know. Um, uh, there's a question here from Chia Huff that I want to. I just because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. I just want to read this. Wendy, I'm hearing you're saying I'm looking at the success of cloud rappers, emo, sad kid bass music, and how much that brand is being really and truly authentic, including sharing when you're having a bad day and building a brand around inclusivity and acceptance of mental health struggles. What are your thoughts on this?
We have such issues with mental health in my world, in the rap world. And you know, it's a product of the environment of these times. You know, I noticed it for the past 4 years, not to make any statement politically, but I've noticed that there's just an uptick in the number of people of color that are struggling and being shot by cops and being, you know, murdered by, you know, people that look like me. And it's really, really, really a problem. And the music is starting to reflect this. And the music is going to continue to reflect this until society makes some changes. Emo rap is at an all-time high. Drug rap is at an all-time high. It's a severe problem. I'm handling it within my circle as best I can. by pulling artists aside and interacting with them one-on-one. I don't think calling anybody out publicly is the way to do it. I don't believe in shaming people. I don't think that helps anything except increase stress and shame. So I can't speak for how we as a community should handle it, but I can say that it needs to be handled. I hear people talking about mumble rap. Mumble rap is 100% attributable to opioids. It's the way people feel when they're high. So if we don't fix that problem, it's going to continue to be a problem. I don't have the answers. I don't know how to fix it, but I can tell you that in my world, on a one-to-one basis, I'm solving problems in my immediate circle. And if we all do that, we can fix the world.
Well said. Well said. I pulled up Juice WRLD lyrics in class 6 months ago. I'm like, well, how is this a mystery to anybody?
Right. It's not. Right. And we lose way too many people in rap to drugs and violence. Way right. Too many.
Well, I think we've come to the end of this, Wendy. Like getting comfortable and going for another hour. Where can people get your book?
At Amazon, and it's about how to get a record deal. I'm writing one right now about how to make money with your music so that you can learn to put it out yourself, because really to get any kind of record deal that matters, you need to be able to show the labels that you're going to make them a shit ton of money. So why not just make a shit ton of money and keep it for yourself? That's my philosophy.
Yeah. Once you do the math, you can see, wow, every time we go back to Nashville or Baltimore or Tokyo or wherever, we're growing our base, we're selling stuff, we're coming up with more shirts, we're doing this, we're doing that, you're finding other revenue streams. It's like, well, why would you sign that away? And that's a great negotiating tool to say to a label, why would we even
want to do this? Exactly.
Yeah, just made 300K on this, and then the label has to say, well, here's a reason. Do you want to work with this producer? We can get you. We'll do this, and you win.
Exactly, and it's a win-win, because then everybody's happy. You're making money, they're making money, everybody's happy.
Well, I'm not going to cry today, but
I love you so much.
I love you so much. It's so great to see you and chat, and know that all the way down, not just the stuff you do on the surface, but the stuff that you think. I love everything that you're about.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for doing this. It's, I know that it's not profitable what you're doing, and I just love that you're sharing this information and this knowledge so that everybody can be successful. I love you to death. Anything you need, I'm here for you. Always.
Thanks, Wendy.
Love you, Martin.
Wow. She is so amazing. Learn how to make a shit ton of money and then keep a shit ton of money to yourself. But just, just what Wendy does should be a blueprint, I think. Extremely successful person who never hesitates to give her time to help people. She came out on a bus. I mentioned at the end, we'll talk about Wendy making me cry. We took students out on a bus, on a tour bus, following my band Pigface on 19 shows around America. And it was a crazy tour. Danny Carey from Tool was out with us. It was just a crazy tour. And while we were still planning it, we were trying to see if we could actually do it. And Pigface itself is crazy, let alone bringing students on a second bus. And Wendy called me. I was in the car park outside the Commons at Millikin. And she called me and she said, this is amazing. I want to do it. And I'm like, Wendy, there's no way I can afford for you to come out on the road with us, as much as it would be amazing. And she said, well, I don't care. I'll rent a car. I'll get my own hotel room and I'll follow your buses in a rental vehicle because I'm going to do this. And at that point, the stress of trying to make a pig face tour happen, and the second bus, it was just crazy. And just to have somebody give that to me, and especially to the students, was just crazy. Wendy Day, amazing. All right, number two. This is going to be really good. This whole few hours we're going to spend together. And session number two is Daryl Hers, who's 19 iterations into Indie Week Toronto. Super smart, hardworking guy. Let's listen to what Daryl has to say for the next 20 minutes. Hey, Daryl, how you doing?
Hey, Martin. Good. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. Welcome to our Midwest Music Expo Weekly. Can I introduce you, Daryl, and stumble through, and then you can just fill in all the gaps?
Sure, that works for me.
So,
yeah.
So then, okay. Daryl is a musician. Are you a drummer?
Guitarist.
Okay, well, that's all we have time for this week's MMX. Okay, musician, artist manager, consultant. You've worked at Live Nation for quite a spell. You co-founded Indie Week.
Founded.
Oh, you founded. Oh, we got to lose the.
There we go.
Founded. There's a difference. How long has Indie Week been going?
It's crazy. This, I think, is our 18th year.
That's something, man. That is something. And I think more recently, you are the marketing and development person at CD Baby Canada.
That's right.
Okay. Your history is long, credentialed, and has, I think, at every step of the way, grown in scope, reach, and positivity. I wanted to say that. And so, okay. So,
can I share a couple stories, actually?
Please.
So this is one thing, like the Live Nation kind of stuff, right? Just to give a bit of background, I was a musician in Edmonton. Edmonton, not the best music industry city of Canada. Toronto, so I moved. Super broke. And I moved here with a band, but the band couldn't handle it, so they all moved back. So I'm in a new city, didn't know anybody.
Wow.
And shy, right? So hustling, networking, all this kind of stuff. Like there's a venue that existed. It was called the B-Side. They had a stage and nobody was using it. It wasn't being booked. So I literally went to the owners and said, I'd like to book shows here. And they're like, okay. So the next few days I came back and I said, okay, cool. Here's all the shows booked till Christmas. And they're like, what? We thought you're only booking a couple shows. I'm like, well, I booked it all. So you're good for the year. And I organized it. And through that, I launched Indie Week, because after booking there for a couple of years and, talking about small venues, just to give you an example of who played during that time, Dan Cantor was in a band called Avenue Road, and he was the music director for Justin Bieber. And then Ricky played there, and he became the music director of Lady Gaga. Ricky Tico, I think, or Torres. Can't remember the full name. Tilo. It's Tilo. And then there's another guitarist, Sean Kelly, who's played with every Canadian classic rock we had there. Donna Grantee, who is the guitarist for Prince, the last female band for Prince. So we had all this kind of talent, and that's what I meant is Toronto had all this talent and stuff. And I was just like, man, we got to get this out there. So that's where Indie Week started. But during that, I took a desktop publishing course, 3.5 months. And I was broke. So I volunteered for an online a radio talk show that was a restaurant and food talk show. So every Sunday I ate really well as a broke musician. And often I was taken to a restaurant opening during the week. And so as a broke musician here, I'm at all these fancy restaurants and getting the leftovers and all this stuff. Right. But every week I would talk to the guests and like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm taking a desktop publishing course. And they're like, cool, we need new menus and we might need a new logo. And I'm like, I don't know how to do it yet, but I'll take your card.
Yeah.
And every Monday morning I would walk to the teacher and go, here's 10 business cards that could be new clients for you. I don't know how to do this yet. And they're like, well, don't you want to try to do it? I'm like, no, I don't know it yet. I'll figure it out later as we go, but here's some clients. And by the time I was done the course, one of those instructors actually gave me like, you should come here as a teaching assistant because our teaching assistant is leaving. So he gave me the tip, and they're literally like, Monday at 9:30 a.m. teaching assistant is going into that office and coming out, and they won't have one. So if you're there at 9:35 a.m., you could have this job. So I did.
Wow.
But the school prior to that also referred me to a client. Like they would get people like, hey, we need a student to do this. So I got a client right off the bat. And then they referred me to another client. And through this process, I've never had a resume or a portfolio or a website. And what I learned is it's all referrals.
Yeah.
Since 1997, I have been self-employed. Yeah. And my first gig doing the desktop stuff paid more than any other job I had prior to that. Working at HMV prior to that, right?
Right.
In that time, I've helped Canadian Tire launch their first website. They came to me off of a referral. I figured out how to process 8,000 images in 3 weeks to get them back on their timeline. Wow. And they were like, how'd you do that? I'm like, well, if I teach you, you won't hire me for the next round. And then I helped an online art database launch. I did 1,200 images for them, scanned and color corrected, all this crazy stuff. And then I got a call on a Monday morning, and there is just random call. It's like, hey, I hear you do Photoshop and the web. Yeah. Cool. Do you have a resume? No. Do you have a portfolio? No. How about a website you could point us to and see some stuff? No. Really busy. I don't have time for any of that. And they're like, but you could do it, right? Yeah. And he's like, okay, well, are you available? Because it's due tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, yes. I always say yes, right?
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, cool. I'll get off call and I'll email you stuff and I'll call you back and we could talk about it. And as it's downloading, I'm like, there's a photo of David Bowie. There's a photo of, Beyonce, Rolling Stones, J-Lo. Like, I'm like, holy shit, this is Live Nation. What's Live Nation calling me, right? And so he calls me. He's like, I guess you probably figured out it's a music company. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a musician. This has got to be Live Nation. He's like, yeah. So it was designing fan club cards. Some people might not even remember fan clubs, but it's designing the fan club card for each of these artists that was going to be sold through Walmart. And he's like, okay, well, this is due tomorrow. We got to present tomorrow. So no pressure, and I'm like, it's 3 p.m. already.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm like, I don't want just this job. I want them all. I'm kind of greedy that way. I want them all.
Yeah.
So the next morning, I get a frantic call from my contact. His name's Bruce. And he's like, you didn't send me this stuff. And I said, I sent you a link. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, click the link. So he clicked it. And he's all of a sudden, he's like, oh, you built a website to display these examples? I'm like, yeah, if you put your mouse, it flips. So you see the back, the front. If you click on it, 3 more samples come out. And all this, he's like, oh, well, they're going to like this. So the thing about it is that I got the job because of who recommended me and their reputation, not mine.
Yeah.
It's like, if Patrick said Daryl can do this, I believe Patrick.
Right.
So that's the power of referral and knowing people. Then the next step is over deliver what they want, give it on time, give it ahead of time if you can, and make them go, holy shit, this is amazing. And so then they came back and said, can you do the microsite to sell these cards for Walmart? Yes, sure. And they're like, well, that's due Thursday. Like, what? Okay. So I scramble and all this stuff. And remember, this is back like days where internet wasn't as fast. Things weren't like file transfer. There's no WeTransfer, nothing.
Right.
And truthfully, I kind of built the website as well of like, I can't transfer these files because my internet won't handle it, but I can send a link and they can look at it there.
That's super smart. That's super smart.
Right. So then after that, they're like, oh, we need a conference call next Tuesday, 8 p.m. 8 p.m. And like, yeah, because the guys from India are going to be on the call. What? So it was an interesting call. So first, it's like with a committee, there's like 8 people on the other line in LA, right? There's me and my business partner, Bruce, at the time, and then programming guys from India. And they're like, okay, well, here's this project. And they sent this PDF that's really kind of blank, like white page with button will go here. Okay. And they're like, so we want to launch a new website and we want you to build it. It's due now. I'm like, now? What do you mean? Well, at least the HTML and CSS needs to be built now so the guys in India can get started because they're building the database. And I'm like, but what's the design? What's the, like, this is ridiculous. And they're like, figure it out. Let's do now. So I spent the whole night. I did 28 templates of HTML, and I'm telling them this is dumb. Like this is like this makes no sense, but I did it. And so the other part was be the guy that delivers. And sometimes you just got to go, sure, I don't agree with it, but sure, because this is a big project. And so I did that. And then the next part was the design. And with this committee, it's kind of like there's one guy that you know is really the guy that's the boss.
Yeah.
He's not really the boss, but he's kind of the boss. And it's like, what do you guys think? Silence. And they're waiting for the guy to say, this is what I think. And everyone goes, yeah. That, you're right. That's it. And so what it was VIPnation.com. And it's the first iteration of it.
Wow.
And so then it's like, okay, now the design is on us to do it. And I'm like trying to match to the templates that I built, not knowing what the design will be. And so we had to come back and we were like, okay, cool. Well, VIP, platinum, dark, velvet rope, red and black and silver, silence. And then the guy goes, no, our brand is white and red. That doesn't really feel VIP to me. So we spent a month of sending designs and it was like shot down, like, no, this is not working. It's not VIP. We need a conference call. And so we had a conference call and silence, waiting for the guy to talk. And he's like, it needs to be VIP, which is platinum, dark, velvet rope. And we're like, and of course the whole committee is like, yeah, it's what he said. Yeah. And they're like, why didn't you do that? And it's like, because we're told not to. So we pivoted, there we go. And we did black, velvet rope, platinum, and we built the website. and got it out. It was late in the game because we had a month of doing the stuff that they told us to do that they didn't want. But we got it out. There was a huge project. So I went from doing fan club cards, micro website, to full-on website. And then basically I did, and this is all freelance, sitting exactly where I am now. And my business partner is laughing. He's like, man, like design companies in New York would kill for this gig. And so basically I did design and graphics for them for 8-9 years of VIP invites, passes, the annual report layouts, a lot of the back stuff, like handbooks and things like that. We did a lot of the event marketing assets, but one also big part is we rebranded the company. So I don't know if you remember back in that time, there was a logo that looked like a ticket.
Yes.
So, yeah. So I did all that, the whole, like everything from right here in my, you know, I went from broke musician really quickly doing that course to here I am doing like world's largest music promoter.
Wow.
Rebranded the company. And then the other thing that was like no pressure, like I would get calls of like, I just finished teaching, I'm walking home and call while I'm walking and it's like, so did you see my email? Yeah, I kind of saw it. I was going to call you when you get home. He's like, well, when are you, what is it? It's a magazine ad. Okay, cool. When's it due? He's like, when are you home? In 10 minutes. He's like, that's when it's due. So I was the guy that just said yes, and I took it all. And I was like 8-9 years of just that, right? And one of the ones of no pressure was like, I had to design the layout of the press release announcing the merger, whatever, with Ticketmaster, going out to the world, right? And I'm like trying to, like, there needs to look like this. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'll do that in InDesign. They're like, no, it has to be in Microsoft Word. That's not a design app. And they're like, doesn't matter. That's what it is. Make it happen. Okay, but it was doing all this weird stuff. So I delayed the press release of Ticketmaster going out because it was just like, why does it have to be in Word? This is the dumbest thing. You know, and one other project which was really weird. I landed in Ireland to run Indie Week. And of course they go, we need a logo for, it was called Frontline Management, which is Irving Azoff's management.
Okay.
Just one of the most influential music managers in the world. No pressure again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when's this due? Because I just landed to run a conference and festival in Ireland. Oh, like now. Yeah. So I stayed up all night after jet lag from Ireland, getting to Ireland. I stayed up all night, and the request was crazy. I did 52 logos. If you do the math, I was literally doing a logo every 15 minutes and good quality ones, like, cause it, you know?
Yeah.
And by the time I submitted it, they said, oops. I'm like, what do you mean? Somebody hit send on the fax machine and they just typed Frontline Management at the top. So could you use this font and put a box around it? That's going to be our logo because it already went out.
Oh my goodness.
Right? And so a lot of that kind of stuff, you just go, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Here's my invoice. When's the next job? And I think a lot of people complain, oh my God, this isn't right. You can't treat me this way and all that. And it's like, that's how you lose all that work.
Yeah.
I made a lot of money during that time. And it's like, those days don't happen anymore.
Right. But that's great advice to anybody coming up. You know, whatever it is, over deliver. You know, always say yes, over deliver. And yeah, that's, wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's like, people need to hear that shit. Because I think, you know, I say 7 years to be an overnight sensation. You are 18 years into Indie Week, 8 years in that position with Live Nation. And it takes a hell of a lot to to get wherever you want to go by whatever circuitous path to get there. And we were talking about, generational things, and I think patience and understanding that it does take years to get somewhere, to even see where it is that you want to get to next. That's tough. It's a tough thing.
Yeah, and also to just say that, you know what, overnight the core company shifted positions within it, and our contact was gone. And a lot of the people that come in, they already have their guy.
Yeah.
So the people that came into position already had their graphics guy. And right at the end of it all, I was working on the new logo, like basically the one that's out now. Looks kind of similar to what we did, sort of, but it's not the one I did. Very similar. And so there's going to be disappointments too, right? But that was a good run. One mistake I can share that was kind of funny is I was doing a VIP pass for U2 on their 360 tour. And when you type in email, auto names kind of come up, right? Bruce is a pretty common one. It's late. I just Bruce, sure, send. And then next morning I wake up and I get an email and I'm like, I don't recognize this Bruce. And he's literally saying, oh, so does this mean I get to go to the concert? I'm like, whoa, I sent it to some Bruce in Dallas by mistake. I was like, you see the disclaimer at the bottom, right? Yeah, you got to delete that right now.
Well,
yeah.
Well,
So,
I want to be conscious of your time. I know you said you haven't eaten today,
yeah.
and I know how that goes. Thank you so much for spending this time. It's been nice to spend the end of kind of a crazy week, and a kind of a crazy day for both of us, I think. But thanks so much for doing it, and I appreciate all of these stories and all this advice you're giving. It's just priceless, and thank you so much.
That's what it's about, and always a pleasure to see you, my friend. We always have good times, and
yeah.
I can hardly wait till we're in Brazil again and having some feijoada maybe, and enjoying the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks a lot, Daryl.
Thank you, everyone.
See you. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Yeah, I know. I was muted. Well, I didn't know, but I knew the second time. I don't want to make it seem like I knew the first time. That person right there, Daryl Hers, that's it. I don't know, it's so good, I think, for a student or for anybody to listen to what he's saying. But the whatever it takes attitude, the delivering way more than you were expected to, that even you think you should. Because like, what happens? Well, you end up with a job, or you end up being blessed with the ability to keep doing it. Hey, Chris. Thanks for putting the code for Indie Week up there, Molly Kruger. Just that attitude. I think actually our session with Daryl was about something completely different. And then when we finished, we started to talk about career paths and his career path especially. And it was just so good that there's that. Our next condensation, our next greatest hit here on Now That's What I Call MMX4 is Lol Tolhurst. I really like Lol. One, he's a drummer. I saw a study that said it's a fact. Drummers are smarter than everybody else. And the study was from Norway, so it's true, but I interviewed Lol quite a few years ago in Chicago. We did an event at Soho House, at the Virgin Hotel, and at SAE Chicago. And there we are. I think we were both born very close to each other. We both came up in the UK during punk and post-punk. We both wear Doc Marten shoes, or at least we did a few years ago. Just a really great, down-to-earth person who's been involved with a lot and spoke with us very honestly about his path. So let's have a look at Lol Tolhurst from The Cure. I think he's talking about his book Cured, which I get messages every month. It's now been translated into this language or that language. I think that book is doing very, very well. Super nice guy. Here's Lol Tolhurst from The Cure.
Sarah going to be interviewing you, so I'm going to turn my mic off and let you guys do it. It's nice to see you again, Lol. Thank you so much for doing this.
No, it's all great to see you too.
All right, Lol, how you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. You know,
All right.
once I finally got the technical difficulties sorted out. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're finally rolling. And in fact, you and I met, it's donkey's years really, but I met you in Los Angeles when you were touring with Presence.
Wow, that's a few years back now. That's probably almost 20 years ago. No,
Yeah,
no, 16. Yeah, it's been a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been some time. So yeah, I mean, obviously we're here to talk about the book, and would love if you can just lead us off with some of the inspiration behind it. You know, kind of what drove you to put it out, and what the reception has been so far.
You know, it's strange because I was listening to Randy just beforehand, and I loved when he was telling about. You know, somebody asked him, "Well, do you find it more difficult once you get clean and sober to create?" And he told it exactly like it was, the truth. It's like, no, it's much easier. It's much easier. I mean, you know, you get to feel a bit uncomfortable at first, like you said, because you're not used to dealing with life, you know, that way. But once you do, you get, there's a lot of benefits. So I had always wanted to write, you know, in my time in The Cure, I'd handled a lot of different writing aspects, things, you know, with lyrics and stuff. And I'd always been an avid reader. I'd always loved literature, always wanted to write. So one day about 4 or 5 years ago, my friend in New York, Rob, called me up and called my bluff and said, "Are you still thinking of writing a book?" And I sort of went, yeah, sure, you know. And he went, "Okay, because my friend's coming to open up a new publishing company in Los Angeles, and you know, I'll get him to meet you." So I went, "Oh, okay." And that was actually Ben Schaefer. So I went for lunch with Ben, and I told him the idea I had for it, and he said, "Great, okay, let's get going." And so we did, and it's been the most wonderful experience I've had since The Cure, really, in lots of ways, because I've just spent, the book came out at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, different territories. I've been on the road with that ever since. I've done about 300 book events around the world. I just got back just before we all had to go into lockdown. I just got back from South America. I've been to Peru and Chile and Argentina, and it was absolutely the most wonderful experience to go and basically I go around the world meeting all the people that have supported The Cure for my whole life, you know, and that's been a great thing to do. And I would have actually been this weekend. I would have been over at the Hay Festival in England if you know, if the COVID virus hadn't swept the world instead. So, you know, it's been very good to do.
Loads of the questions that have come in have been from people in South America, actually. So I don't know if you're
Okay.
fresh in their mind or just have a Fantastic audience.
Yeah, I've got to admit, you know, going down there, it's like Beatlemania again. I really didn't expect it. You know, we arrived, Margie, my assistant, and me, we arrived about midnight one night in Mexico City, and I thought, oh no, but you know, it's just we're going to go to a hotel, go to sleep, and there was like 100 people waiting at the airport at midnight for us. You know, it was like it was very weird, but it was very good. They're lovely people.
Excellent. And it was, as a Cure fan, it was really interesting from myself to just kind of see where this book sort of connected and then picked up and went forward from the 10 Imaginary Years biography of the Cure. It kind of added a lot of depth and a lot of additional layers to it, and was just an excellent read. I think for any Cure fan, it's just a really rich and well told story.
Thank you.
Have you gotten any reaction from your former bandmates about it?
You know, yes. I told Robert was like the first person that I gave it to read. You know, probably in May of 2016, and I said, you know, I haven't read this. Is there anything you particularly disturbed by? You know, I don't think you would be, but if there's anything you're particularly disturbed by, ask me. You know, ask me. Maybe I'll change it. You know, so and then I got an email. He said, well, I'm really happy that you've done something like this, written something and that. But I had been on the road for about a year, and I got this email one night that said, oh, there's this thing in here. Why did you say that? And why did you say this? And I looked through this whole long email, and I thought, oh, you know what? None of those things that he was thinking about are actually in the book. They're all from reviews, or, you know, like very garbled kind of things that have been mismatched. So I had to sort of say, no, that's not actually in the book. You know, this is what's in the book. You know, everybody else has been pretty good, more or less. I mean, you know, the thing is, and Randy will tell you this, you can't be too, if you're going to write your story, it has to be your story. It can't be your story, the version that everybody else has, you know, sanctified or whatever. And also, you know, my book was never going to be about dishing the dirt, or, you know, I know where all the bodies are buried. I do, but I'm not, you know, that's not the point of writing it. The point of writing it was to just describe what had happened to me, and mainly for myself, before I forget it, you know, because it comes along. The good thing is, though, it's exactly the point in your life to write it when you've been away from things like that from a long time, you know, because I didn't really start to do it until I was like 50. I started to think about it, and you know, you have a much better perspective on it at that point, because when things are very fresh in your memory, you remember them with all your angst and all the problems that came with it. And, you know, after 25 years had passed, whatever, you know, your mind's clearer, and you can see it in the right perspective. So, you know, I'm sure, like Randy, I've caught the writing bug, you know, so I'm hard at work on the kind of follow-up right now. But it's been something that's been instrumental in a whole sort of creative renaissance for me. You know, I've started writing a lot of music again, and started doing all kinds of things. And like Martin, nobody's as busy as Martin, because he does a million things, you know, all the time. But it's
very true.
It's like it's become a labor that loved me back, a labor of love that loved me back. You know, so it's been a wonderful experience.
Well, a curious question tailing off of that, as an artist,
Yeah.
and having obviously had to dive back over so many years to deliver this book, now that it's out, now that it's been received, now that it's out in the world, the reception, I mean, your experience of having done it, is it similar or fundamentally different from that sense of relief and satisfaction that you get after completing an album?
Actually, it's very similar. It's similar in the way that we used to make music. We used to make albums. You know, like you would make an album, spend all this time recording it on tape, and then 6 months to a year later, it would surface. You know, it would suddenly be printed up and pressed and out. Now, you know, you make something today, you can put it out today, you know. So book publishing, very similar, you know, to the old style of doing things. You know, you finish the book, then it has to be proofread, then you have to do all the, you know, copy editing, and then eventually they go, yeah, okay, well, it's going to be out in a year's time. So by the time it go out to the public, you haven't forgotten about it, but you've processed it so much that you're not kind of done with it, but you're probably on to a different frame of mind. And the thing I always used to like about making actual records was that when you actually went to go on tour to promote the record, you know, 6 months after you'd made it and finished it, you get that feeling of joy all again, you know, from the music. And it's the same with the book. You know, I had almost forgotten that I'd written it, and then I went out on the first kind of leg of the book tour around America, actually, I think it was most of it. And then I went to France and England, and it was just wonderful, you know, to have that kind of relive it again a little bit, you know, every time.
Excellent. Oh, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Martin,
It's like, I'm sorry. It's
go on.
going through a similar thing, Lowell. I'm using this time to revision my PIL book, and
Right.
it feels like I'm patting a dog on the head. These memories from 40 years ago, sharing them with people. It feels like I'm patting a dog on the head. It's this familiar. It's kind of a really comforting thing, you know. And I love that yeah. There's no dirt dishing. There's no room for that.
Right. Well, yeah, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, people are going to be the way that they are. It's your experiences, you lived your life, you know, and that's what you have the right and also the ability to put out. So, you know, seems to me it's always drummers as well, always drummers that write the good books, you know.
And Randy, but
And
Randy's
Randy.
drummer. He drummed all the way through the Pigface set. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
then he's an honorary drummer. Yeah.
Yeah, a budget drummer.
So,
My interesting thing with the writing process, Lowell, is I had my life provided the story, right? It was already in place, but the theme of my book was personal accountability. My life's the story of me getting arrested and my alcoholism and all that stuff was just the vehicle I used to convey that theme.
Right.
And did you have a unifying sort of theme that became apparent to you as you wrote the book?
Yeah. You know, actually, the whole thing in the end was kind of like Pilgrim's Progress. You know, you have to, you know, you have to go to the seventh circle of hell, but come out of it with some knowledge, as opposed to coming out of it with bitterness and self-serving stuff.
Right.
You know, so it's about redemption, of course. You know,
the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell.
Yeah. Except you don't want to make yourself the hero all the time of every story. So
No.
Because that gets old pretty quick, you know.
Sure.
I mean, we have a president that does that, and you know.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a whisper question. Can you
Okay.
hear me? I don't want to be too loud.
Yeah.
How did you actually go about writing? Did you set down time? Because I want to write a book this year. That's my big project. Did you set down time every day at the same time, or did you just kind of like go? I'm curious about the actual process of writing a book like that.
Right. Good. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I did. I had a process, and the only way I could do it was I said to myself, okay, I give myself 1 year. And that's all I'm going to do is write the book. I mean, I did other things, but I said all I'm going to do is write the book. A friend of mine said, some people have an office near here. You know, they're looking for somebody else to share their office space with them. Just there's two guys that do, I don't know, kind of web projects and things. And I think you'd like it. And it's only about a mile from where I live. So I thought, okay, that's a really good idea, because you could do it at home. You could do it all at home. But if you do it at home, you sit there, you type, and then all of a sudden you go, time for lunch. Oh, that needs fixed over there. So I made it so I had to go to a place to go to work every day. And I'd read a lot of different things, actually some books that Ben Schaefer told me about, like Stephen King's book on writing. And he said, well, I have a place that I write in, and nobody gets to read anything until the first draft's finished. So I just went in for a year to my office, 4 or 5 hours a day, and just wrote. And some days, you get 200 words and it's horrible. And some days you get 2,000 and you don't want to stop. But then I did the other thing that Hemingway always said, never finish your story every day. Always leave a little bit there to come back to the next day. And if you do that consistently, I did it 5 days a week for a year. At the end of the year, you've got a book, and for me, it was completely a learning process, because although, I loved books and read it, I've never written anything longer than about 10,000 words ever. Maybe I wrote a magazine article or something, but writing books is a whole different kettle of fish. And, I made a lot of mistakes along the way. At one point I had, in this office, I had this big chart that went all the way around the walls, and I was marking off the timelines of things. And then I got talking to a friend of mine who's a novelist, and I said, well, how do you go about writing? He said, well, I put all of what I think are good chapter titles on cards, and I put them out on the table in front of me, and then I just mingle them all around till I think I've got some kind of story that goes through all of them, and then just got to fill in the gaps between the chapter titles. And it's kind of like that. I mean, the first thing I wrote for the whole book wasn't at the beginning. I didn't start that, sit down and just write, okay, in the beginning, this is what happened. I actually started when I got back together with The Cure in 2011 at the Sydney Opera House, and I wrote all about that. And my agent said to me, oh, well, you should go and see this person. I won't name her. She's not a writer. I know that Ben knows her for sure, and Randy knows her, but he said, you should go and take your work to this writer and, see how you're going, how you're doing. And she doesn't live very far from me. So I went round to see her. She's a little older than me. And I was very nervous, because it was the first thing I'd written completely seriously, and I was very invested in it. It's kind of like putting your baby in front of somebody and saying, please, tell me what's good about this or bad, And I gave it to her, and she read it all and she got through it. And at the end, she turned around to me and she said, you are a writer. You're a writer. Just, and handed it back to me. And I was just like, oh, okay, and then I could kind of go on. I needed some kind of validation, just to know that I was doing the right thing. But yeah, absolutely. The process was 1 year sitting down and writing every day.
Well, that's pretty useful for me to hear too, Lowell. Thank you.
Okay.
When I was writing my book, my friend Kevin is a best-selling author. He wrote a book called The Yellow Birds, which was made into a movie. And he was the guy I first showed my writing to, because he's like a National Book Award finalist. And he's like, I showed him some of the chapters, and he was like, you're a writer. And he said, the most important thing to remember is that when we sit down at the blank page, we engage with something true. As long as you engage with something true, you make the blank page your bitch. Now go finish the book.
Right.
That wasn't quite what it was. It was Pamela DeBar's.
Oh yeah.
And she didn't actually say that to me. She didn't say anything about making anything my bitch, but she said, it's got to be truthful, and that was the thing that stopped me at the beginning, because I had to be aware that if I'm going to write it, it has to be 100% true. Has to be the truth. Because if it isn't, people that read it very soon will understand that it's not true. That
Yes.
You can't really fool the reader. You can kind of skirt around things, but you can't really fool them. And so I thought, okay, am I prepared to put everything out there? Not my war wounds, so to speak, but am I prepared to be just me and be vulnerable? And once I'd made that decision, it was easy.
I'll end the self-serving questions with one that sort of ties us into the group questions here, and the one that a lot of us want to know. Are we going to see any new material from Leavenhurst?
Yes, yes, we are, but probably not this year. I've been working on something this year, which has to be very secret, but it will see the light of day, and I'm very, very excited. So there is some new music coming for sure. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. All right, and with your blessing, we'll get into some of the group questions here.
Okay.
All right.
So the questions, we've kind of put them in different groups.
Okay.
The first bit were people who wanted to know about your early cure days. So a woman in Argentina named Nancy asks if you have any memories from your visit there in 1987.
Well, yes, and that's actually probably a whole chapter in the book, because we had a couple of riots. I mean, we went just after General Galtieri had been deposed and stuff. So it was pretty. It's funny because when I just went to South America before Christmas, and the same thing was happening again. You know, we were supposed to go to Bolivia, and I got a phone call from Bolivia. Said, don't come right now because they're not letting people out of the airport. You know, you won't be able to actually get into the country. So, and then we got to Chile, and they just had all these riots in Chile as well. So, you know, it's very volatile down there. But in Argentina, the first time we went, it was we were probably the first band from you know, England or the US that had been there after all of that trouble had erupted. And a lot of people came to see us, and it was really kind of a good show. But the trouble is if you repress people for so long, you know, they have all this enthusiastic energy, I think is probably the best way to describe it. So things got out of hand, and there was a riot, and you know, things happened very. Yeah, there was a few deaths and stuff, which are, you know, pretty bad, obviously. But you know, people would say, oh well, you know, wondered if the band was had something, you know, didn't want to be coming back to Argentina, and that was never the way. That was never what we thought. We understood what the mood was, and it wasn't directed towards us. You know, it was directed towards the situation they've been living in. And so when I went back this last time after Christmas, before Christmas time, sorry, it was very nice to go back and talk to people. And some people had been at those concerts, you know, like 1987. So that was kind of amazing, you know. So no, it was good. It was good.
All right, there's another one here. It says, on 17 Seconds, Faith, and especially Pornography, your playing became more and more tribal, a bit like Joy Division, Bauhaus, or the Banshees. Was it on purpose?
I wouldn't say it was on purpose, but I say there is a purpose behind it, if that makes sense. It's like that, you know, two of those bands that you named, like the Banshees and Bauhaus, I have great admiration for, particularly for the drummers in those bands, right? So obviously, and Joy Division, of course, Stephen Morrison is a great drummer. But you know, I think we came from, you know, we didn't come from the same areas, but we came from the same era musically, and the same influences to a greater or lesser extent. You know, they permeated into our thoughts. So we're bound to play, you know, some variations are similar, but not completely the same.
Okay. And a fan named Rick would like to know what led rototoms specifically for your kids.
A lot of the things that we did in the Cure were, you know, a lot of people when they start bands, they you know, maybe they're young, sort of 13, 14, and they hear different bands, they get into music, and then they start going, okay, we'll form a band. Well, you know, what was our influence? Okay, I want to play drums like this guy, or I want to play guitar like this band. But for the Cure, we had a different modus operandi. We said, what don't we like? You know, what don't we like, and what are we not going to play? Well, we're not going to long guitar solos. You know, we had to calm Pearl down a bit because he was really good at that kind of stuff. And you know, for me, I had started playing drums as a way to express myself. You know, if we'd been able to be furniture movers and express ourselves, I would have done that. But it was, you know, to me, it was the expression that was important. So I looked at a lot of things that I'd seen people play, different kind of drums. And at the time, a lot of people played these things called concert toms, which were like big and deep with only one head. And they were very 1970s. And suddenly one day I saw these rototoms and I thought, they look completely different. Most people would just use them as additions to their kit. But I decided, okay, I'm going to make my whole kit out of it. And it looked a lot different. And also, you know, from a vanity point of view, you know, if you're the drummer, you get stuck behind this whole list of things, you know, and you have to kind of look over the top. But the good thing about rototoms, they're so small and spindly, is that everybody could see what I was wearing. You know, I'm by far the most sartorial member of the Cure, so you know, it was good to do that. You know, like Charlie Watts. Charlie Watts is the most sartorial in the Rolling Stones. You know, so I was like, okay, he just played behind a small kit, looked very dapper. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make sure people can see what I'm wearing. You know?
Excellent. So Carlo wants to know, which of the Cure's albums represents what you always wanted to do as an artist?
You know, this question comes up again and again, so I have some different answers. They're all true. Pornography for me was the best version of the three-piece band because, you know, by the time we got there, you know, if you're in a three-piece band, as I'm sure Randy and Martin will tell you, if you can't make any mistakes, because if there's only three of you and one of you messes up, everybody notices. Like as soon as you start adding, you know, an extra guitarist, an extra person, that, you know, you can mess up a little bit now and again, and nobody's really going to notice. You know, just the aficionados might see things, but three-piece band, you've got to be so tight and precise. And for me, the band that made Pornography was that band. You know, Simon, Robert, we had locked in. You know, we didn't need to talk to each other about what we were going to play. We just felt it every time, and we knew. And that's the other thing that makes a band. You know, you can say, okay, I'm going to make this band. I'm going to get the best guitarist, the best drummer, the best bass player, best singer. We're going to make the best band. And it doesn't work like that. It works. There's some kind of, I think Joe Strummer in The Clash said it best. He said, you know, you can't mess with the chemistry. You know, when they had all the trouble with Topper and his problems, you know, they should have actually just looked after Topper, because Topper that was the chemistry right there. You know, he was like so, you know, absolutely vital to the way that the Clash sounded and who they were. And but you know, you learn those lessons gradually as you go on. But for me, the band that made Pornography was the best band. And then the next band, which was, you know, a bigger version with Boris and Pearl, with Kiss Me, that was like a great album to make, you know, and had a lot of joy of life in it, you know.
Excellent.
Let's see. All right. David asks, what's your favorite Cure record post disintegration?
You know, I've got to be honest, I'm not sure that I've listened to them enough to know, because, you know, for me, well, you know, it's not me just saying it. Well, it is me just saying it, but you know, unless, for me, the Cure was like, you know, because I started from the very beginning for a good portion of my life, and even now, you know, it's part of my soul. So things that I was not there for, I don't really have an opinion about, because every Cure album, if you say the name of it, if I was there, even if I was only there in body, you know, if my mind had gone somewhere else, but if I was there, it's like a diary. Each of those records is like a diary to me. So I remember what happened. I remember how it came about. I remembered what we were talking about. And so albums after that, I don't really, you know, I have individual tracks from time to time that I hear and I think, oh, yeah, that's good. But some things I listen to and I think, yeah, if I was there, I would have done this. And so, you know, it's the sort of thing I can't really say I listen to it that much, you know, I'm being honest.
Switching gears a bit, question-wise, we've got one from Luca. who's saying, in Cured, your book, you said you don't like the UK as a place to live. How do you think Crawley and London had a part in the earlier Cure?
Yeah, it's very funny. Like about sometime last year, the local paper in Crawley, which is a suburb of London, you know, to the south, right? My brother, my elder brother, still lives there, and he sent me a copy of the local paper, and they had last year was like the 40th anniversary of the Cure, so they had a museum, and they put a Cure exhibition in it, and they you know, they asked me for a few things. I had a few things for them, whatever. And, you know, that went on. And then on the day it opened, the local paper had this headline, and it quoted from my book, and it said, he hates us, he hates the town, but we still love him. You know, like, I don't hate them. I don't hate them. It's just, you know, without that place, we wouldn't have wanted to escape and get out, you know, because it was this tells you just like how it is as a place. A few years ago, I went back to England, and I visited Michael Dempsey, first Cure bass player. We're still very good friends. And Michael said, "Oh, you know, I'll pick you up from the airport," because he lives not that far away. And he said, "On the way back, do you want to go and see the old places that we used to play?" And I went, "Okay." So we drove around. We stopped at the Rocket, which was the first pub we ever played. And he said, "I'm going to wait in the car. You and Cindy, my wife, if you want to go in and just have a look." You know, and I thought, that's strange. Why doesn't he want to come in? And I went in, you know, and I was looking about. It was Sunday night, and there was about 3 people in there. You know, without making too much of it, the only reason that pub ever has anybody going there now is because we played there 40 years ago. You know, they have nothing inside. There are no pictures of us. They have nothing. They have not made anything about it, and they don't care, and they never will, you know. And so I'm very, you know, I have a friend now, because like, as you get older, your friends get into different positions of authority. So I have a friend that's on the council there now that I grew up with, and he said to me, "Oh, I'm gonna, you know, petition the council to put up, you know, some kind of plaque there so that people will know." It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. They don't care, you know. So in that way, it was great to get away. I mean, saying that, the town next to it, which is where I actually grew up, and Simon as well, they did put a little plaque up on the subway that we was like the inspiration for the Subway song on the first album. They put a little plaque up there, and you know, so that was kind of good. My mother would have liked that if she's still alive. She would have gone taking a picture next to it, you know. But yeah, other than that, you know, the fact it was so sort of apathetic, and nobody really wanted to change that, and I think it's still kind of the same. So, you know, I think in that way, the fact it was so bad is what propelled us outwards, you know. So thanks, Crawley.
And a question came in from a person named Joe. How do you describe the feeling that you get knowing that there are fans who actually idolize you?
You know, I guess I feel humbled and flattered at the same time that anybody would think that. Sometimes it's a little scary. You know, I did book event. Actually, I think it was in Mexico City, and when I turned up, you know, the whole place is full, and they have security guards for me for a book event. You know, armed security guards, guys with big guns standing next to me as I'm doing things. And the people in the bookstore said it's the first time we've ever had armed security for a book signing. And so that side of it can be a bit freaky, because, you know, I want to get close to people, and I want to talk to them, and I want to do things with them. But sometimes, you know, I always think of, I don't put myself in the same boat at all, but I always think of, like, you know, Mark Chapman and John Lennon. There are some people out there who, whatever is going on is not quite what should be going on. Let's put it that way. And so that's the bad side of it. But everything else is wonderful. Of course, you know, it's nice. It's flattering, of course, you know, and humbling. You know.
Do you have any advice for young, inexperienced musicians who are just starting
All Cure fans are called Molly, by the way.
out?
Yeah, no. Yeah. Any advice? I'm gonna resist the temptation to be facetious. I really don't want to be. You know, my son is a young musician. You know, he's 28 and he has a band, and it's a lot harder now in some ways, I think, because of the internet. You know, there's so much stuff that you can see. You can just dial on, get on your phone. You got stuff. When I first started playing in the late 70s, when I first came to America, we could tour around the whole of America playing small clubs, colleges, anywhere. We could do it 5, 6 nights a week for months on end, and we could support ourselves. And it was relatively easy. You know, there came a point where both me and Michael, Robert didn't have to because Robert never had a job, but me and Michael just said, okay, next week we'll stop working and we're going to go full time as professional musicians. And you could kind of do it, you know, and you could support yourself enough to be able to do it. Now I think it's almost impossible, you know. It's like, unless you've got a great, you know, benefactor behind you, or you can actually get it the wherewithal to manufacture a lot of merchandise and things like that. It's very hard, I think, for new bands to make it in that kind of traditional way, really, you know. So I think the best advice I can give is just find what is your difference and make that your selling point, because that's how you're going to be able to live, you know.
Wow, that was. Oh, I wouldn't mind just having a cup of tea with Lol, just sitting around and hanging out. Neither of us drinking these days. I'm 90 days in. If you are struggling too, there's lots of help out there for you. Coming up next, it's just crazy. They don't even have a sign in the pub where they used to play. They should. If that was America, I've got friends in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with a bar, Starlight, who would have, if the Cure played there, like every drink in the place would be named after a Cure song. Yeah, that's England for you. So coming up next, we take a little bit of a, well, I guess it kind of dovetails nicely because Lol was just talking about being able to make a living as a band, and had a great chat. Actually, Eddie Sanders, attorney Eddie Sanders, he's been down to Decatur to talk with students. We had a magical session in a toy museum filled with Christmas tree lights, and we talked about, and what did we do with that magic? We talked about copyright, but it was wonderful, a wonderful session. And he's been involved in every MMX. We have a session now with Eddie Sanders. We're talking about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and all kinds of stuff. So let's head into session number 4 with Eddie Sanders. Hey everyone. Today, this is our legal issues class. So you got some students. So one of the things I try and do in everything with our classes is bring in people who are actually doing it so that they can answer questions, bring their real world perspective. Hi, Pam. Bring their perspective and their real world knowledge into our classroom. And so today we're welcoming Eddie Sanders, who has been label owner, artist manager, and he is now an attorney here in Chicago, has been for quite a while, and has his own practice. His practice is called Protect and Collect. Eddie, how long have you been accepted in the bar. Is that how we say that?
Yeah, passed the bar 2009, November 5th, 2009 was my date. So that was a good rundown on the business side of me, but also a DJ. So I come from the perspective of an artist when I do my legal practice. So I'm always thinking creative first, so trying to make sure that their rights are protected moving into deals.
Okay. Can we go just into some basics for the students of
Okay.
rights and copyrights and setting up a business and some of those ideas from an artist perspective first? Yeah. So can we dig into some do's and don'ts with a basic recording contract? Is everybody into that?
Yeah, I always like to make sure we're asking ourselves some general questions as far as like, how long is this going to last? What do I have to give up? And starting off with how long does this last? Understanding our terms. What is a real year? Is this a calendar year? Is this a metrics year as far as like I have to do certain things for a year to happen? If we look at publishing deals, they'll say you need to provide us with 4 songs every year. That doesn't mean within that year I have to give you 4 songs. That means no. Until you reach those 4 song qualifications, 1 year hasn't lapsed. So until I finish those 4 songs, it could have taken 3 years. That's 1 year. So understanding our term and actually being able to map it out, because it's very rarely, unless we're talking about like management deals or things of that nature, is it going to be within calendar terms. It's going to be some type of metric, some type of deliverable that I'll have to provide to actually qualify as a year. So that's one of our most important things, because oftentimes people get confused on how long something's supposed to last just because they see the number of 1 or 2 or 3 years, but not actually knowing the metrics behind it. Quick story, in California, there's now legislation because the California Labor Code states that a service contract can not last longer than 7 years. But there's an exception to that, meaning if you provide records or service of records, that doesn't qualify. So now they're trying to adjust that legislation to state that all record contracts, the legislation is passed, and all record contracts for publishing deals can only last 7 years in time. So legit
Wow.
7 calendar years, you know what I'm saying? Because there are certain deals, a very well-known producer, I got to look up his name again, but he had records with like Drake, Neil, Rick Ross. He just tweeted out, he was like, yeah, for my 4-song term, I had to give them 24 records, right? Because people might ask, oh, I only have to deliver you 4 songs, cool. Those 4 songs have to equal 400%. So I have to give you 4 songs that I own 100% in, or else I have to start adding up songs. So it took him 23 songs. Now this gets back to our split sheet and making sure we have good percentages on our publishing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm just giving that away, now I'm only owning 10% on all these songs. How many 10% do I need to get to 1? That's 10 records, right? So now we need 40 records that I only own 10% of to get to my 4. And how many artists can we name that have 40 smash songs?
Right. That same thing happened to me. I think I triumphantly came to what I thought was the end of my first publishing year, and I had 8 songs. I'm like, here we go. Where's the money for year 2? Of course, half of it was spent. Here we go. Stand by with the champagne. And the publishers called me like, yeah, you've got 50% of 8 songs. That's 4 songs. You need another 4. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, no, you co-wrote these songs. And co-writes were common over the last 20 years. Now I think it's quite common to have 6, 7, 8 co-writers on songs. You've got to be really careful. So tying this back to the conversation at the beginning, you might be having an argument with the person who played tambourine who isn't really talking to you about their actual contribution to the song. In their mind, they're thinking, if I don't get two more 15%, I'm not going to tumble into the next year of my publishing contract. So you might be having a conversation that you think is based upon quality of tambourine performance. You're actually
Right,
having,
take turns.
yeah, wow.
So this is just a lawyer negotiation tip. We're pushing for recoupment deals over delivery deals. We want recoupment over delivery. Recoupment meaning if the label gives me 100,000, I just have to make you 100,000 back. It can come from one song, it can come from 25 songs, doesn't matter. You just have to make your 100,000 back. Delivery is I'm giving you 100,000, and you have to provide me with 4 songs that you own 100% in, that chart #1, all these other different requirements. They call that the MDRC, minimum delivery requirement commitment. We want to get rid of that, and we want to go more towards recoupment. You give me a certain amount of money, I get you this money back within these projects that I do.
So, okay, I don't, I mean, I'm an artist and I'm a label owner. And to me, what you just said, if we were talking houses, right? I buy a house in California and I paint it up and I fix up the driveway and something crazy's going on with the kitchen sink. And over a year I plant some flowers in the garden and I really make this a nice property. At no point am I going to say to somebody, if somebody comes to me, let's say I buy a house for 500 grand. If somebody comes to me and goes, I'll give you $1 million for this house, I'm not going to say, no. I'm happy with 800 grand. To me, I don't know that I would want to do a deal as a label that says, if I stumble into a hugely successful artist or help to nurture an artist, the more help I give an artist to recoup, the quicker I'm going to lose them.
You still have, and then I guess because we can differentiate between our publishing deals and our label deals. Because with our record label deals, we're still going to be, okay, I want 5 albums. And with our label deals, it doesn't, you do have requirements, but the label deal takes on bad albums all the time. On our publishing side, they don't really have the same overhead and expense as far as like getting songs out. So they shouldn't be holding you to they shouldn't be holding you to this standard in which is hard to get out. A lot of label deals, artists go through them, they sign with new label deals. The predatory behavior we see is more on the publishing end of things, where artists are locked in for 20, 30 years. On the label end, we'll do the recruitment. They say, okay, we're locked in for 4 albums. You still deliver those 4 albums because you have an actual calendar. You're not based upon, okay, this album doesn't count because it didn't sell 100,000 units, things of that nature. You see that in the publishing. So on the label end, yeah, I could see why a label wouldn't want to say, oh, here's 100,000, and then after the first song, they jet off on you. You still want to lock you in for a certain amount of albums. But on the publishing end, once I recoup, we should be able to move on to the next year.
Okay. What do you see just generally in the business? Are things less predatory than they used to be? More predatory?
It's a little less because you have people more informed. Artists are wise and are becoming more educated on the field. There's no such thing as a bad deal. Essentially, it is the people that you're doing the deal with, because I can have the same contract and it worked great for one artist over here and it worked horrible for an artist over here. Exact same terms. It's about the people that you're doing the business with. So I can get a contract to say whatever, other lawyers can get a contract to say whatever. The very important piece here is when you're dealing with music, talking about your creations, is doing business people that you can relate with, that you understand, that you have good vibes with. Because when things get tough and you've got to buckle down and start figuring out numbers and all that, you want to have somebody that you can call and even have that uncomfortable conversation with, and then they don't turn into, oh, I don't want to work with this guy. You want to have that person that you have that good relationship with. So that's one point. Another thing is understand the credentials of the people you're doing business with. Don't be quick to just sign a deal with somebody because you want to have a deal. Make sure that these people can provide something for you. Because within the last year, it hasn't been me getting people out of deals with Sony, Warner, and things like that. It's been me getting people out of deal with pop-up shop label over here and my mom and dad management over here, and just random companies that are trying to middleman their way into situations and sign artists to these ridiculous terms just because they want to ride along with the success of the artist. So making sure when you're doing a deal with somebody, even if they say you're friends or whatever the case may be, understand what you're doing in the business and who you're doing the business with. That's super important. Having that relationship with people. Like going into something with Martin, I would sign with your label over someone with offering me more money because we've known each other for a number of years. I've seen the track record of the shows that you produce. I've seen the artists that you turned over. We have an understanding with each other. So that relationship would be better than somebody just offering a huge check. You know?
Right. And it's easy to find this stuff out. It's all out there. You know, if you want to work with a producer or a label, you can start to delve deep and find people complaining on their Insta accounts or crying on Facebook, or you know, you can see all this stuff. You can read reports about how an artist is when they're on tour. You can talk to venue owners. Um, you know, I think just by being aware, um, you can beware of these bad situations and find out what you need. The difficult part is when somebody's waving a contract at you and different size bags of money, perhaps. It's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough. Yeah.
Especially if it's larger than a larger sum than you've ever seen in your life. Sometimes it's hard to turn that down. But
Yeah.
understanding if they're offering that to you, that means you're worth 4 or 5 more than that. So they're offering you because you have some value. So then at that point, you should say, okay, I got something going on here. Let me figure out what's going on with my situation that has people wanting to offer me money for this.
So, what else would you be wary of in a contract?
So we even talked about term, so understanding how long that is, and truly understanding what rights were given up, how long. When I say rights were given up, because I've done deals where an artist said, "Oh, I just got a 1 album deal. Once we do this album, then I'm out," and they don't realize, okay, yeah, you do that album, but the label is going to own that album past this contract. So how much of my catalog am I giving up in this situation? Because the main thing that we're trying to understand here is, as artists, is how much am I worth? What is my art worth? Because until you can give yourself a proper evaluation of how much you're worth, and then you can properly negotiate yourself and understand, I can't give up 5 albums for the rest of my life because that catalog is going to be worth 200,000, and the label is only providing me with X. So, how much am I receiving for this, and what do I have to give up in exchange? It's gonna get. I always stated in these broad, open terms of just very loosely how much I'm not giving up, so that we're not just trying to read one section of the agreement and say, oh, it just says that right here. Because with contract language, you'll get to section 14 and it'll wipe away whatever was said in section 7 and section 8 with just one sentence. So understanding, we're talking broad terms of what am I giving up, just to say as an overview, what in this entire agreement is there something that I have to provide? Where do I in this agreement have to give up some rights? And if I'm giving up some rights, what is going to be that exchange? Because we're talking negotiations, we're talking contracts. This is an exchange of assets. Label has the money, artist has the music, or label has the services, artist has the music. What is our exchange of assets, and making sure that's going to be equal?
And I think that sometimes it's those services you get from the label that actually get you to that point. So it's
Definitely.
always like, look, I need to go on tour with this artist, or I need to work with this producer who I can't pay their day rate, but that would be part of my deal if I sign with this label. That's one of the inducements that labels have. And it's just finding that place where you get what you need, but you also need to incentivize. If you do too hard of a deal and the label isn't getting anything, maybe the label will start to do more for other artists that aren't as good, but they're just getting a bigger slice of that pie. So it makes sense for them to help that artist succeed because their payout will be more. All of
How
this.
does that compromise the kid?
Yeah.
So like that was a very good point how you mentioned. So when you're going into these deals, understand what you want to get from the label. Okay, I need to go on tour. I need tour support. I need a larger distribution network. I need nationwide PR. These are the things I need. Can I get these on my own? Okay, I can get the national distribution, I can get the PR, but I can't get the tour support. Okay, one of the main things I need in this negotiation is I need to provide them to provide me with tour support. So doing a realistic checklist with yourself. Okay, what do I need to scale my business up? Okay, I'm here. I'm only reaching 100 people per show. How can I get that to 5,000? What can I do on my own? Okay, I can handle this on my own. I got this locked in. Once you realize those things that you can't do, that's when you're reaching out. That's what you're doing deals with people for. If you can handle it on your own, do it on your own until you have to scale out. It is a much better process for you to understand how everything works and being able to run that business because you won't know if somebody's providing you with a good service unless you know what that service truly is. You won't know if I'm doing a good job as a lawyer if you've never had to look over a deal or talk with somebody or negotiate some type of term. You won't know if your accountant is doing a good job with your balance sheet if you've never gone on to QuickBooks or Excel and had to look through some numbers for yourself. You won't know what good PR is if you've never had to reach out to Complex, Double XL, pitch a story, things of that nature. So understanding how much you can do on your own, and then when you realize you've reached the limit, okay, now let me reach out and get third parties to help me.
That leads into a good question from Elise. Should new artists look for an attorney right away, or is it okay to wait until a legal issue arises?
We use the term "it depends" a lot, and it definitely does depend. I would say the initial, once you're serious about getting into the business, the lawyer and the accountant are going to help you set up your actual structure, getting your LLCs right, your trademarks, your business structure, and things of that nature. So unless you can handle that on your own, then that's the first time you're reaching out to the attorney. And then yes, once legal issues arise and they're starting to, did I cut out my okay?
Yeah, you're back.
Once legal issues start arising and you start receiving contracts, yeah. But before that, I feel like you should have a relationship with an attorney. I have a lot of potential clients, I will call them, in a sense where it's just me having conversations with them. They haven't reached the point where they're getting a bunch of deals, but just them trying to get an understanding of what they should be doing, what they should be looking out for, the ways to protect themselves initially. It's important to just start building that community, starting off.
And what drove you to start your own practice? Is that what it's called? A practice?
COVID-19.
Really?
Yeah, I was working with the firm. They're great guys. COVID hit. I was here at the house, just working here. It was one of those situations where I was like, I need to be in more control of what's happening for me personally. If a situation like this ever happens again, where we run into this pandemic type situation, I want to make sure that I'm the master of my ship. So I decided that it's important for me to start setting these things up. So I just made that decision to move away from the practice with the firm and start my own.
Okay. Anything else you want to add, Eddie, before I open this up to some questions?
I got a podcast to check out.
Oh,
I know someone already listened. So yeah, Molly might have posted it. Lords for Musicians. Go check it out. I just put a new episode dropped today, talking about Big Cat a little bit, and then one of the other hosts, he manages Doja Cat, so he just got back from the Grammys. He's got some cool stories about what went down there and all that. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
cool as hell. What's the podcast called?
Lawyers for Musicians.
Okay. Good deal. Yeah, I love that shirt. Chicago is for lovers of pizza, surely. Um, I'm loving this. I think I'm surprised no one said, why didn't you do? We spent 9 hours doing this in May. Why didn't you edit it down? Oh, it was live. We could, okay. But anyway, I hope you're enjoying this. I kind of like this format. Next up, uh, next we hit the halfway point with a recent and super awesome friend of mine, Randy Blythe is the singer of Lamb of God. And he accidentally joined Pigface. Our mutual friend Greta Brinkman, who played bass with Moby and Debbie Harry, I think, from Blondie. Uh, we needed a singer for like 3 days. Mary Biker had to go back to England to do a festival. And Greta Brinkman said, well, I know this guy, Randy. And I'm like, oh, okay. Does he know Pigface? Does he like Pigface? Turns out he's a big fan. And of course, Lamb of God are just hugely, hugely successful and from kind of a different genre. But wow, what a great idea it was. He really kicked ass on tour with us, and he's such a super nice person. So, talk about all kinds of things with Randy, and in this Mental Health Awareness Month, it's good that I think a few of these panels have already talked on these issues, and Randy is quite a while sober now. He talks about that too. Okay, Randy Blythe from Lamb of God.
Hey, my name is Randy Bly, and I sing for a heavy metal band called Lamb of God. And I'm also a Leica Camera USA photographer and an author. I wrote the book Dark Days about it. It deals with some legal difficulties I had in the Czech Republic, and also it touches on my yeah, there it is, plug. I do not have a free download to offer out for that. My publisher Hachette would not be too stoked on that, but if you want to read it, you can look it up. When I was in active alcoholism, when I drank to deal with all of my issues, I tended to awfulize everything in my head. I'm a catastrophizer. So I would sit there and think, oh my God, I forgot to mow my lawn. And due to the butterfly effect, eventually within 30 seconds, we'd be at World War III. Bombs would be dropping. I'm catastrophizing things. I'm future tripping. I'm thinking far and agonizing over an unknowable, uncontrollable future. And that is that's horrific for your mental and emotional health. I lived that way for a long time. When I got sober, a big thing that helped me was being cognizant of the reality of each individual moment and remaining in each individual moment and trying my best to remain grateful for each individual moment, the experience of it, even when it's not the most comfortable thing. Because my life so far this moment is the only thing that exists. I'm not trying to get spacey and zen or anything, but it really is when you think about it. We go through existence experiencing individual moments. My life so far has consisted of one long string of this very moment. So what I have to do in this moment is decide how I am going to best use my time, best use this moment, and things are challenging right now, but there are opportunities, as you're showing, by doing this, to take advantage of this and to notice the beautiful parts of this and make the best of this moment. When I'm drinking, all that shit goes out the window. That's it. Because and it's a strange thing, man, when I drink, because I'm a nice guy at heart, believe it or not. I'm relatively well spoken and I have manners. I was raised correctly. When I'm drinking, all that goes out the window. I'll take one drink and then it kicks off this chain reaction when in my head and in my body where all I care about is the next drink. So the only way I know to prevent that is to not take the first drink. And it took me a long time of struggling and fighting that, because I didn't want to believe that I could not control my drinking. I didn't want to believe that, even though there were mounds of evidence, and my family is telling me, and my friends are telling me, and the fine gentlemen of the Fraternal Order of Police in Richmond, Virginia were telling me, and judges were telling me. None of that shit made a difference, because I didn't want to believe that I couldn't control my drinking. And that being said, that's also an important distinction. I'm talking about myself. I do not think there's anything wrong inherently with drinking, right? I think it's wrong for me, because I'm different than people who can drink normally. I'm vastly, vastly, vastly different. Like my mom, on Christmas, she'll have a couple of glasses of wine and she'll be like, ooh, start to feel a little buzzy, a little dizzy. She's like, that's enough. That's enough. And I'm like, that does not make sense to me. That's when you're just starting to get to the good stuff. I saw a counselor one time and they asked me, how much did you drink? How much do you drink? And I looked at her and I said, all of it. All of it. All of it. What else is there? What other point is there to it? So while I realize intellectually that people can drink normally, and some people, I even think it's good for them to get drunk every now and then and wake up with a hangover, and that reminds them of why they don't do that. That's for normal people. For me, when I wake up with a hangover and the wife has left me and all my money's gone and I might be in a jail cell, that thought of like, maybe I ought never do that again, that never enters my mind. My mind says, oh my God, we hurt. Let's change the way we feel because we are uncomfortable right now. And I know how to change the way I feel. Alcohol, and so that's the difference between an alcoholic and a regular person. An alcoholic has an insane reaction to this sort of situation. And normal people are like, ugh, I'm, they'll swear off for a while. Alcohol for me is just it's one manifestation of an addictive personality, right? So when I got sober, I noticed that I replaced my drinking with other things. With some people, it's sex. With some people, it's food. They're replacing this thing that they're missing. For me, and this is embarrassing, but I've admitted, my problem was the bookstore. I I went to the bookstore daily to go buy a book, like in order to find something, usually maybe some sort of self-help book that's going to make me feel better, that's going to change the way I feel, right? Because I'm uncomfortable in my own
Right.
skin, because I don't have my best friend, which was alcohol, which kept me company for 22 years. So when I removed that, I replaced it with this almost compulsive book shopping deal. It got really embarrassing, dude, because I would go to the Barnes and Nobles, and I'd walk in and they'd wave at me, and the lady who worked at the Starbucks there knew exactly what I wanted. She'd start making it. I'm like, Christ. I mean, it's like going into a bar. You walk in and you're the regular at the bar, and they're like, boom, there's your drink. With me, it was the coffee at the Barnes and Noble. So I was trying to change the way I felt with an external substance. In this case, it would be buying a book, buying something to make me feel better. And I bought hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books, many of which I haven't read. I still have them because books are they're, I mean, it's better than buying crack, admittedly, but it was becoming problematic. So after a little while, I came down and became more comfortable in my own skin. And, in this pandemic right now, I've said so many times, thank fucking God I am sober. Thank fucking God. I cannot imagine being drunk right now. I can't imagine like what what it would be like for me to be drunk in this lunacy. It would just be I'd make some really poor decisions, because my history has shown me that. Also, conversely, I'm grateful that I don't have to get sober in this environment. I'm already sober. That being said, if one is struggling with alcoholism, and they know they need to get sober, there I'm like the present, no matter what the circumstances are. One interesting thing about that is like, the what do they call it? Essential businesses, is that correct?
Yeah.
Open during this. In every state, all the liquor stores are open. And one reason for this is medical, because if they close the liquor stores, some people might have DTs and die, because there's two substances that the withdrawals can kill you: alcohol, benzodiazepam. That being, Xanax, Klonopin, Valium, and that type of stuff. The rest of the stuff is just going to make you feel like you're going to die. Like coming off opiates, coming off coke, even coming off meth, unless you have an underlying health condition, you're going to feel like shit, but you're getting better. If you have a really, if you have a strong addiction issue with alcohol, depending on your metabolism, or with benzodiazepams, if you immediately stop them, you can go into DTs, have a seizure, and it will kill you. So if you are a heavy duty alcoholic, or really addicted to benzodiazepams, and you want to stop, although right now is not the ideal time to go to a hospital or whatever, there are places you need to be medically detoxed. It's irresponsible for me, because I'm really only an expert on one thing, and that is my own alcoholism. But I can speak authoritatively on that. My alcoholism, but I've seen enough of it to know that if someone has, depending on how advanced they are in their alcoholism, or in their benzodiazepam addiction, they need to be medically detoxed. And this is very, very important, because the DTs can kill you. That being said, if you want, I can tell you like the story of my first day sober. And this was in 2010. This is October of 2010. October 17th of 2010 in Brisbane, Australia. We were on tour with a little band called Metallica. And like, I went out with some friends that night, and I had this fan come up to us at the bar, and he was just like, holy shit, you know, it's you. And I was like, oh God. I'm like, okay, dude, you know, and he just sat down with us. Like, it wasn't like, hey, I'm a fan, nice to meet you. He like sat down with us, and I was like, ugh, and was just like staring at me like a crazy person. He wouldn't leave, so I was like, all right, dude, you're gonna buy the drinks. So he would not leave us alone, so I burned up every last Australian dollar he had in his wallet, going bar to bar to bar to bar. I was an asshole to him, I was mean to him, and we drank so fucking much. And this guy at the end of the night could barely move, and I was miserable because I had reached a point where it stopped working. The alcohol just wasn't working anymore, and I felt pretty sober after drinking like 18 beers and God knows how many shots. So I went home and I was like, that sucks. So the next day I woke up and I walked out onto my balcony, and I had a really nice hotel room. It was like a suite. It had a balcony. It was on the botanical gardens were right down to the other side. And there's weird animals in there because you're in Australia. Across the street was one of my favorite bookstores in the world. I'm a huge book nerd, as I've already mentioned. Great restaurants all along this street. And I walked out and I sat down, and I didn't even manage to get drunk the night before, despite the prodigious amount of alcohol I put in me. But I still had that horrible day after feeling. So I sat down on my balcony and I looked at all the beer bottles from the night before that I had arranged on this table, and they were perfectly ordered, right? Because I'm a little OCD-ish, even when I'm fucked up. They were perfectly ordered and empty. And I looked at them and I was like, those beer bottles are a metaphor for my life. They're empty. I am I am nothing more than a receptacle for alcohol right now. And even though everything is perfectly orderly, my life looks good on the outside. All it would take is one little tiny nudge, and it's all going to come crashing to the ground. And I looked out of the balcony at all these cool things around me, the botanical gardens, this bookstore, and all these restaurants. And I'm going to play with Metallica that night in front of 17,000 people. And I was like, I don't want to live anymore. And I was in a good place, you know. I had money in the bank. I'm on tour with one of the biggest bands in the world. Still in a relationship, all that shit. I don't want to live anymore, you know. So I was like, I've got to try something different. And so uh, I decided to not drink, to at least for that day. I'm like, I'm not going to drink. And I went to the gig, and I, you know, James Hetfield was there, and he's sober, and a few other people were there, and I'm just like, help me, you know, because I talked to them about it. That's another thing. You can talk to other people if you're struggling. You don't have to go with this by yourself like I did for years and years and years and years and years. It doesn't work, you know. So I was like, help me. They talked to me and they're like, you're going to be okay, dude. And so I talked to them and changed clothes. And 20 minutes later, I walked on stage in front of 17,000 people crying because I was just one raw nerve, and I had my hair down in my face, dude, like, because I'm playing this heavy metal show and I'm a tough guy, you know, but I'm just weeping, trying to scream Lamb of God lyrics, you know, and that went on. I got through the show. That was, and then I went home and took a shower and went to bed. And the next day I woke up and did it all over again. And it was very raw for a while, but that was my first day sober, you know, and I got sober on heavy metal tour, surrounded by free alcohol and free fucking drugs. I started, I've acted in a television show. Since I got sober, I wrote a best-selling book. Since I got sober, I've exhibited photography internationally. I became a photographer. There is a lie, a cultural sort of moray that depicts the intoxicated, high sort of artist. and that is necessary for creation. And it's just a fucking lie, dude. It's a lie. And I bought into that lie for a long time, really with writing, right? Because my favorite authors were just like any other angst-ridden young 20-year-old man, Bukowski, Hemingway, Hunter S. Thompson, right? And all those guys did drugs, and all those guys fought, and all those guys womanized. And I did all that for years. I did drunks, drank, got in fights, got women, all that shit. Like the great writers. I did everything that the great writers did except for sit down and fucking write, right? So when I stripped away all the excuses of alcoholism, you know, that it provided me, and the time eating, I sat down and started writing, you know. And alcoholism prevented me from creating things. Like I used to sit, you know, when it was time to make a record, I used to sit in my shed and take a bunch of pills because this is going to help me get in the mood to, you know, write lyrics for this heavy ass record. And most of the time I'd just wind up sitting there drinking beer, being high as shit, listening to Black Sabbath over and over, you know, and maybe I'd scrawl a line or two and it'd be total bullshit in the end. So, but yes, no, it may be uncomfortable to create at first when you get sober. If you've done it under the influence of drugs or for so long, it may be uncomfortable, but you push through that, you're going to be better than ever. Because most of those famous people that partied like that and did all those drugs and drank and create, most of them are dead. A lot of them by their own hand, you know.
Well, I've tried that BrewDog NA beer. It's really serious and quite tasty. What a lovely individual. You know, the tour bus would pull up in a place, and I'd start getting texts like, "Oh, what's going on?" Sometimes be like, "This sound system isn't good enough for this," or whatever. But oftentimes it would be Randy just saying, "There's a washer and dryer backstage. Who's got laundry?" And he would help doing people's laundry. These are the people you want to be on the road with. These are the people you want to start up a new business with, or be in a band with, do anything with. Just once you experience something like that, it kind of raises the bar for who you want to surround yourself with. And really great encouragement to drink less or think about stopping, maybe. So coming up next is the mentor you see. Oh, like I'm pointing in the wrong place. I'm still pointing in the wrong place. Boom! The mentor you see behind me, Ad 2. He has an album called Jim Crow, the musical. And it's always a pleasure to talk to him. He sent his mentees along to Thalia Hall in 2019 to sing with Pigface, unbeknownst to anybody else in Pigface, except me and Orville Klein. Orville ran some beats for Day, Just Chris, Cam, and Molly. Day, Just Chris, and Jay Lamar to jump on stage and just shred Hips, Tips, Lips power with Pigface. Oh, it was so good. I saw Molly put up a link. So here is 20 minutes with Ad 2, Chicago's own Ad 2.
Ad, how you doing?
What's up, man? How you doing, Martin?
Very good. It's nice to see you. I'm going to hold up your album for a little bit longer. So, what do you want to talk about today? We talked about mentoring. I know that. Oh, I don't think I properly introduced you. to really an artist in his own right. I've got to say, Jim Crow, the musical, it's something I go back to. So in addition, as I said, to being an artist in your own right for quite some time, I know when we talked months ago, I thought the content of Jim Crow was timely, and then I look back at a few things. I'm like, fuck, you've been singing about this stuff for a long time now. So you also you run a place called The Haven, which is literally a haven, 47th and King Drive.
Yeah, 46. So 46, 22. Yeah.
It's a studio that's open to anyone pretty much to come in and hang, where you can be a mentor to them. And for any Pigface fans who are listening, I called Ad and I said, hey, send some of your artists over to Thalia Hall on the last day of November. And oh my goodness, it just transformed the show. There was already 30 people on stage, but they all came out, just passed the mic through one of our songs, and honestly, it's one of my favorite moments on stage ever.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
and so thank you for mentoring those individuals. Greta, one of our bass players, because there were 3 that night.
Nice.
Greta is on the line from Berlin, and she said it was outstanding. I mean,
wow. Yo, thank you. Wow, that was surreal. Like I remember them telling us just what type of experience that they had, and it was so mind blowing for them. And that's one thing that I live for, is to give them like experiences when they could look out into, you know, saying on the stage and look out into the crowd and just be like, wow, this is what it feels like to, you know, to make it. This is what it feels like to be on stage, to get love, to people to appreciate what you do. Like, those things are the things that keep you going as an artist to achieve what these next levels are. It's like, how do you know about what the next level is until you see it? So, you know, that was such a great experience for them to have, and also to get outside of the world that they know, you know, something outside of just the regular hip hop shows that they see.
Well, and similarly for us. So, what did you want to talk about with us today?
So today, man, I really, really, really wanted to talk about something. Of course, like as Martin mentioned before, I wanted to talk about the importance of mentorship in the music industry, and it's something that has definitely changed my life completely. I would not be the same artist I would be had I not had proper mentors to guide me in certain spaces. I never had like a full-on management. So this kind of what makes like my journey a little bit unique, but I kind of had it through these surrogate mentors, and they were the ones to help give me the guidance that I needed, or to help kind of put me on game, as we always say. And so I wanted to highlight that, like that aspect of what we don't often see in music, and especially in hip hop. Hip hop is like, we have this space where people like to use this phrase, self-made. You know what I'm saying? I'm a self-made man. You know, I got myself here. You know, like nobody helped me to get here. When in reality, there's a lot of people who helped you get to where you need to get to. And you know, I think being one of those people who I can kind of be considered a one-man show, like people like, all right, you can sit Ad anywhere and he'll be fine. It's really the opposite. There's like people whose brain that I pick. There's my elders who I call, who I'm like, hey, I've never read through a contract like this before, or how do you negotiate something like this? And then they're able to sway me into the spaces where I need to. And even if I don't necessarily take the advice, the fact that they give it is important. So, but I guess I wanted to start with some stories. I guess I wanted to show some videos of the mentees who I have, and show why these moments are meaningful, and just how powerful just being present beyond just what we do for ourselves, like what we do for the artistic community, how that changes what the landscape is completely. So one of the places I would start is I would maybe tell about this story about when I used to go to this space on what was it? It was on 63rd in Aberdeen, and I met this guy named Cassius D. And Cassius D was a part of the Zulu Nation, and they were like some of the group of people who helped to kind of establish what the rules of hip hop were. You know, the culture of hip hop, like in New York, that's what they did. And this guy would sit me down every Saturday. I had to be like 17, 18 years old, 16 or something like that. And I was coming to the shop every Saturday, and he'd make me clean up the space. And then he would start showing us these poster boards. And the poster boards would just be like of anything. Like at first it'd be like hip hop history. He was like, you need to know this. Little brother, you need to know this. If you don't know this, then you can't be a part of this. And I was like, damn, okay. Then he started like on other days, he would show us like pictures of it's crazy. Oh, this is random. He showed us pictures of like graphic pictures of STDs. Like he was like, yo, look at this. This is what happens if you're not careful. And I was like, I ain't signed up for all this. So, you know, he was very like blunt about the information that he gave us. And to be 16, 17 years old, I was kind of used to people sugarcoating certain things. But because he was so honest about it, it helped me to learn what I needed to do if I wanted to participate in this genre. He would make me freestyle, and then he'd be like, all right, now not only freestyle, I need you to freestyle without cursing. And I'm like, I can't do that. These are my crutch words, you know what I'm saying? Like I gotta end it with like I gotta say that. And then he would turn around and be like, no, you have a vocabulary, use it. And it was these challenges he would present me. And I would just be like, okay, my brain has to work a different way. But there was also a sense of like gratitude I would have when the lessons came out, when I would be able to show it back to him like, hey, this is what I learned from you. You know, this is the stage presence that I have that I've been practicing. You've seen it work. And I wanted to go back and report it to him and be like, look, the things you're teaching me are working. And so it's those moments, you know, like those moments that I think validate what you're doing, and you need people to be present in those moments in order for you to work, you know. So but that was one of the key ones that started it out. That was the brother Cassius. So
And do you think is it because people are so anxious to get themselves on that it feels like if you're helping people, you're eroding your own chances somehow? I mean, I know that that's not how it works, but you know, I think
yeah,
maybe some people think that.
I could see that, because you know it's very much so like a race sometimes. Like people feel like they're racing when in reality it's like you're running your own marathon. You know, it's like your journey is your journey. You're not racing against anybody else. But at times it can feel that way, because you be like, man, I'm starting at the same spot as this other person. This is my friend or my peer, my colleague, and I look over to the left and they just got signed, or they're doing a tour, or they're just selling out of this, or they do a video and it's doing these type of numbers. And it's hard not to compare. It's hard not to sit back and say like, well, mine's only did this, or I don't have that, and my checklist doesn't look like yours. When in reality, you know, you might not be ahead at the beginning, but towards the tail end of your career, it could look better than anybody else's. It could be a lot more stable. But I do think that sometimes people feel like if I take time out of moving this for lack of better words, this boulder, if I'm gonna stop moving this boulder of mine to help you push yours, that mine's is gonna fall. And when in reality, sometimes it's like you helping push somebody else's boulder might actually push you up a little bit further. Like I think all the good things for me happened when I was helping other people out, and it came back full circle, and other people remembered that. So it's just very much so an important moment. And with that being said, I would like to share one if I can.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so this video, I'll explain it to you guys like a little bit afterwards about the context. Well, I'll give you some context right now. I had a mentee, her name is Keita. And Keita wasn't necessarily always the best like rapper or artist. Like she just kind of liked to be around because it was like wanted to make music, right? And just like the energy that was in the room. And one day, unfortunately, her brother was killed, and she was going through it. And the first place that she called was us, and she said, "I don't have anywhere to go right now, and I'm lost. I just need somebody to talk to." And it just so happened to be a day that we were off, like we weren't supposed to even be open. And then I told her, I was like, "Well, I'm going to this event. You can come with me." And she went with me, and she was supposed to be just there to observe and just to kind of get her mind off things. And somebody thought she was the help. They were like, "Oh, hey, move these boxes," and she started moving the boxes. She didn't even think twice about it. Then they were like, "Hey, can you go do this?" And she went to go do that too. Then they were like, "Oh yeah, and here's a sign, go stand outside and advertise for us to get more people to come in." And I'm going up to her like, "What are you doing? Like, you don't have to do none of that." And she was just like, "Nah, it's cool." She's like, "It's all right. It's helping me get my mind off things." And later on, they ended up doing this giveaway for somebody to get Dwayne Wade's like autographed shoes. And she entered to be in that contest and left and didn't even hear the results of it. So this is what happened the day after. And yesterday when you left out the joint, right?
Who won the shoes? Who won the shoes? Who won the shoes?
You'd be crazy surprised, right? So they had 7 people that they called, right? They called 7 other numbers. Nobody was there. And guess who's on the 8th?
Who? Me?
Yeah.
What? Oh, shit! Oh, shit! You serious?
I'm dead.
You serious?
Open the bag.
Oh my
Yo, what? Yo, what? Yo, what? You brought it up. You brought it to fruition. That's all you. Told you. Told you. They called 7 numbers, G. 7 numbers. And it just so happened that the one that they called right after that was yours.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. That was one of those moments for me that you start to realize what being present does for certain people. Just like you may not necessarily know, or they don't necessarily have to be perfect. They don't have to have it all there. They don't have to be in that space where you want them to be. But it's getting there. It's the journey of walking with them in that space, not correcting them and saying like, "Yo, you need to do this now. You need to do this now. You need to be this now." Like sometimes you just have to be present and to be able to walk with someone in that journey. So, she never in a million years would have thought something like that. Like she always would tell me like stuff like this doesn't happen to people like me. And it's like that's the importance of being present in somebody's life is to say like, yes, it should happen to you. You do deserve good things. You know what I'm saying? Like you should be in that space of being celebrated, or your life is valuable, your art is valuable. And if you can't even see 10 steps ahead of you, I'm seeing 20 and I see where you're going to be. So it has to happen, like just that little bit of confidence, that little bit of space where you could nudge somebody and give them the belief in themselves that may not be present. So that's one of the crux of what I believe in, like giving people that confidence, being that person in that space with them to encourage them to maybe give them the tools that they may not have had to work with, and be like, okay, well, let's see what happens when you do this, or what happens when we, put you into this situation. So that's one of those moments, man. And I've watched Keita in particularly, she's been growing phenomenally, and not even more so as an artist, but as a person. Like I've watched her move herself out of the hood. Like just literally, we used to say it all the time. Like, I guarantee you, when you leave out of this situation, you'll be much happier, much happier. And then she just turned around and left the state after I had paid for the bus ticket. I was like, yo, if you go, just go, and don't look back. You'll be just fine. And she got on that bus, left, got her own apartment, and has been living with her girlfriend ever since. And it's just been beautiful to watch her be happy, So that's what that is, where I just love moments like that.
For all of the good moments like that,
Mm-hmm.
how do you deal with when it's not good? I remember, I think the first time, I don't remember which one of my students from SAE introduced us, and I think you sent you came to Reggie's. They said, I'm going to bring some kids with me. I'm like, well, okay, and they just started passing the mic, and a month or so later, maybe I came across some photographs and shared them with you.
Yeah.
I remember you emailed me back. You said, oh, this is bittersweet because one of the kids in this photograph isn't with us anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
On earth do you navigate all of that?
That part is difficult, because I've had 3 that I've lost in total, but 2 in the program that since we started, and both of those were rough. Like Tato, who's the one who was in the picture. That was rough because we used to have conversations about life, right before I would drop him off in front of this spot on like 67th and Halsted. And I used to be like, you can't do this forever. You know what I'm saying? It's like this life, this can't be it. And he knew in his heart that it would be tough. You know what I'm saying? And I think he was having one foot in, one foot out. And the one thing I will say is that it's hard to give people, like, you have to make sure that their reality matches the one that you want to give to them. Like, I can't tell them change your life completely if I'm not able to provide a way to maintain that lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's easier to fall back into those habits. But it's really rough because when he passed away, I remember he made a phone call and he was on his way to the studio. And then one of our mentees said, hey, we get ready to close up. It's all right. We'll just meet you tomorrow. And instead of coming to the studio, he went somewhere else. And, that's where it happened. Another one, which is a moment that I would never wish on anybody, man. It was just like having to see my mentee being cremated, like, being at that space. And then they were just like, who wants to stay in the room while, while this happens. And it's a small select group of people who are mom let be there. And I was just like, I couldn't sit there and be in the room for something like that. And to watch these people who I've known be full of life, to be joy, to be happiness, to be, potential and just everything, to being nothing in that space. Like, I'm not used to that. I'm not used to seeing them like that. And so that became like, you have to, one, be present for other people. Like, as my mentees grieve, I have to be the one to take on a lot of that, talk with them about these things and let them process it and tell them that showing your emotions is healthy, talking about it is healthy. But I don't know if it hasn't really made me like, I think I'm still learning how to cope with that. You know what I mean? Like I'm still learning how to deal with it. And there's good days, there's bad days, but you know, it's one of the rougher parts that come with it. And I don't enjoy it at all. And it's crazy because I'm just this week, you know, 2 days ago, one of my friends, he unfortunately committed suicide, and he's a mentor as well. And so it's just you start to realize just like how much people need other people in our lives, you know. And so it's really really tough, man, really really tough. And so yeah, I'm just figuring it out and processing it.
Yeah, I'm just yeah. I've lost a couple of students, and it's very difficult.
Yeah, yeah. But the thing that I've been trying to really like put forth is like is once we're aware, like the beauty of being aware of what people are going through, the empathy that comes with it, which is also tying into why we give so much of our time, is like, yo, we have to, once we're aware, like check in on people, even the ones we assume that they got it all together, or people who are trying to come up to the spaces that we have, you know, like there's so many people in this world who might be like, I just want to be where you are. Where you are is success to me. And just that little bit of help, that information may just make a world of difference. Just being able to reach out to somebody, because this artistic journey is hell. Like I've said this to my mentees all the time after having gone through it and have got signed, let go of everything, and went back to just what normal life was, and I loved it more. And I wish someone would have told me that this artistic journey will pull so much from you, and people don't understand, you know, the expectation or even the output that comes out. You know what I'm saying? Like what you get from it is very rarely matched to what the effort that you've been putting in. You know, like financial stability doesn't exist. Just what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, mentally, what it takes from you, and then just ego and pride and what it looks like when you're not in the spotlight and having to deal with, you know, like just what you're doing is, it's a mind fuck, man. Like it's tough. So, and people don't talk about it. They just more so just be like, we show the good side. We see, you know, the shiny stuff. We see the happiness. We see the cars. We see the money. We see the attention. But nobody sees the lonely times. Nobody sees the despair. Nobody sees what it takes for you to get to those spaces, the sacrifice that it is every night. Like right now, I'm suffering from some sort of like my anxiety for my sleep. Like I can't sleep long. But that came from all those nights of like, yo, I'm up at the studio all times a day. There's so much stuff to do. And then now I'm like trying to tell the kids, it's okay to sleep. What's for you is for you. You know what I'm saying? Like you can relax. Like don't lose yourself trying to pursue something that may not look how you want it to look when you get there. So all the things that I think we need to start like really pinpointing to make better artists, to give them more like mental health resources, to give them a more like a well-rounded like idea of what this industry is before they get there, so that the person is maintained, that the vessel is maintained, and it's not just another artist for, you know, making money who's out here doing things. Like forget that. Let's make better people so that they're better when they get out of this journey, and they're socially intact, they're morally intact, they're spiritually intact, emotionally intact. Like that's important to me.
Oh, how do you find ways to balance and refuel from all that output?
The past like maybe year and a half, I've been telling myself, you know, prioritize my happiness. That's been my phrase. Is prioritize your happiness. And so I had to go back and kind of look at what things made me happy, and not just the stuff that was giving me this gratification because it was work. You know, like stuff that was completely separated from work. So I used to love playing video games. I'm back playing video games now. You know, I just spent a little time unplugged from everything and played video games for a while. I also figured out the foods that I like, you know, and it's not just to be like, oh, well, you know, these are the crutch foods that I'm eating because I'm unhappy, but it's just like, I want to find the things that give me joy. And I need to do it for me, not wait for other people to do it for me. Because there were so many times I'll be like, they know what I'm going through. How come nobody's helping me? and instead, I was like, I have to really be my own best friend. I have to be able to make myself happy, so that way it's not predicated on someone else either doing or not, or showing up or being like, I just need to make sure that I still got a stake in it, you know? And then the other thing about work, especially when you become like very dependable and you start knocking it out the park, the request for work doesn't stop. No one will stop you from working. They will work you and keep asking for favors, and they will figure it out. And you have to be the one to pull yourself over to the side and be like, yeah, nah, I'm not doing it.
Somebody asked, how do you handle it when a mentee fails at something they really thought they'd succeed in?
Well, I kind of like downplay it. Like I tell them like, okay, well, good. I'm glad this happened. And they'll be like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm glad you did. I'm glad it didn't work out. They'd be like, okay, wait, why? And I'm like, because one, you learn so much from failure, quote unquote, right? And you really it's only over when you quit. Really, when you fail, you're learning how to make it work. Like you'll be like, all right, I made a misstep here, a miscalculation here. And next time, if I do it, I'm going to ensure that this doesn't happen by these ways. And so I downplay the whole moment. I'm like, okay, good. Well, you're still here, right? You're alive, right? Ain't nothing broken. You all right? And they'd be like, yeah, I'm good. It's like, well, that means we got more work to do. And so, but I don't want to make that moment bigger than what it is, because it's not, you know, like it's minor. And if you're on this journey, you are going to fail. Like something is going to not go the way you plan it to. So I hope that they learn it early. I'm like, please learn it now, so that way we can rip the Band-Aid off. And then, you know, just I want them to have that moment and them to realize just what this journey is. Thank you guys so much for just y'all presence. All the comments and stuff. I truly do appreciate you guys for just listening and watching and being receptive. So thank y'all.
Thanks, Ed. It's nice to see you, mate.
Yep. Likewise. Y'all take care.
See you. Thank you.
Wow. I'm enjoying this. I'm going to do another one of these. There's honestly, we have a couple more to go. But we could do another one with 10 different people who all have really interesting, valuable stuff to throw out as well. And this is making me feel really good about what we've accomplished there at Millikin, what my students have done. And it's good. Thank you for joining us. So up next is a great friend of mine, somebody who has been just inspirational. Galen Lee. I met her. Bob Boylan from NPR introduced me to Galen, and her music just punched me in the heart. And she asked me for some advice about touring, and I said, "Oh my goodness, don't tour. Read my book first. I'll help you in any way I can." She's like, "Well, I was thinking about selling my house and buying a vehicle." I'm like, "Stop. Careful," which is not the advice I usually give people. And she called me a few weeks later. She said, "We read your book and I've thought about everything you've said, and we've sold the house and we're going on tour." And now, wonderfully, she comes out on the road with Pigface, and she's part of the Pigface family, and I just love her a lot. So here's our session with Galen Lee.
So I'll give you the speedy rundown. I wanted to talk a little bit about being an artist during COVID, but more particularly being a disabled artist during COVID, because there are some special considerations that I think aren't being discussed enough. And I think if I can shed some light on the issues, that is good. And then I would love to answer any questions you have afterwards. And then I'm going to play a tune or two. So my name is Galen Lee. I am a violinist from Duluth, Minnesota, and a songwriter. And started playing in orchestra when I was 10. And I was really lucky because I have a disability. My arms and legs are bent and they're shorter, and I have brittle bones disease, and so I couldn't play the violin normally, like up on my shoulder. But I was just lucky. Like I didn't realize at the time it was just luck. Like the teacher that was the fifth grade orchestra teacher just happened to be like, you have a really good ear. I think you'd be good at stringed instruments. I'm going to try to help you figure out a way to play. Which, as I began touring many years later, a lot of music teachers don't say that. They say, "Oh, you can't do it. Sorry, and now you got to do it." And they don't encourage kids to adapt their instruments. And so I was lucky, and my teacher did, and I've been playing ever since. And then when I was out of school, I got out of classical music and switched over to folk and experimental and just kind of like improvisation and Celtic music and all sorts of different kinds of music. And a big change happened in 2011. I met a person named Alan Sparhawk, who's in the band Low. And Low is from Duluth, Minnesota as well, which is kind of how our paths crossed. But he formed a duo with me, and it was all improvisational instrumental music. And um, he would use a looping pedal, and he would loop my violin, and I would just play harmonies to what I heard, because harmony is my jam. Like that's what I'm best at doing. And so he would do that, and we had this project. But one day he came over and he gave me a looping pedal and an amp, and he's like, "Here you go. You need to figure out how to do this on your own. Someday you're gonna perform by yourself." And I was like, "Haha, crazy! I'm never gonna do that." But then it was really fun, and I loved looping, and I did end up performing by myself, and actually I started writing songs. I think because of the looping pedal, it gave me this freedom to explore music in a totally new way, and I started writing music kind of out of the blue at age 27. I had never written anything before that, um, and in 2016, I entered NPR Music's Tiny Desk contest, which um, there were 6,000 submissions, and you send in a video of you playing an original song in front of a desk, and that's the only rules. And so I submitted a song. I'll do it later today, probably. And it won, which was very surprising, from Duluth and just like a fiddle teacher playing local shows. Had never ever toured in my whole life. But the very first show that we did for the Tiny Desk after the video was recorded was in Chicago, and that's where I met Martin. I Bob Boylan knows Martin, and he had him on a panel, and Martin was talking about his book, and I was like, "Hey, I want to tour now because I just won this thing, and I kind of think it'd be fun to try touring." And Martin's like, "Okay, well, take it easy, go one slow step at a time." And then I was like, "Can I read your book front to back?" And it was amazing. So if you haven't read his first book, is the first one Tour Smart, right? And the second one's Band Smart, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
Band Smart's
Yep.
got some good stuff, and it's free from my website right now. But what I said,
But Tour
yeah,
Smart's the one
what
I
I
read.
said to Galen was,
Yeah.
"By all that's holy, do not tour."
Yeah, basically. He said, "Don't go in full time." And I said, "Well, I think we might sell our house and tour full time." And he's like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure." So we did that. And Paul and I toured, and it's always been very DIY. I never got signed to a label or had a manager or anything like that. And there's pros and cons to everything, but I'm kind of a little mini Martin in my heart, I think, and I really like troubleshooting, and so it's something that I like took his spreadsheets and adapted them to my own, and I just like we went in full bore in 2016, and we toured for 4 years all over the country. And the more I toured, the more I learned about accessibility in the arts, and that's what I'm gonna primarily talk to you about today. It was just, I kind of think when you grow up playing in your own town, you think, oh, well, maybe my town's not accessible, but surely these other venues are, or surely these other people are aware of this issue, and you start to realize that it's a global problem, actually. Accessibility is a global thing. And so we toured for 4 years, and then, of course, the pandemic hit, and so um, that kind of put an end to all the live shows. I mean, they all got canceled and everything started transitioning online. And so, real quick, before I get too far into the accessibility part, just a side note is what we've been doing to sustain ourselves at home. I think you always have to multitask as an artist, and Martin said that again and again. But now it's even more true. Like, I'm saying yes to every little tiny festival that's online, and like trying to do voiceovers and all the little things that people send my way, because I think at this point in time it's too early to tell what's going to end up working. I also have a Patreon page, which has been a huge lifesaver. I started it a year before because I want to write a book eventually about the last 3 years that we've been 4 years now that we've been on the road as a disabled artist. I want to write about that. And so I had started this Patreon, and I had no idea that it would end up being like how we pay our rent, like actually right now. Because like right now we're not touring, and it was a huge godsend basically to have that. And then the idea of thinking of different ways to engage. If there's a skill set that you have that you can share, it's almost like it's never been easier to create a platform, right? Like you have this conference online, you think maybe 60 people will come, and now you have 400, Martin, or 700, or whatever. The registration number is huge. It's a good time to be creating, and if you're on the front end of this curve, um, the world is definitely going to change, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how I think some of these changes are going to be really positive for people with disabilities, but the world is going to change, and if you're on the front end of it rather than the back end of it, you'll have all these skills already set in place when the world starts kind of getting back out into the in-person stuff. I started touring. I planned my first tour 6 months before it actually happened. So the other thing you could be doing with this time is starting to plan how are you going to do your next tour, and start thinking ahead. Like I have a booking assistant that I hired, a PR assistant that I hired, and like I have all these spreadsheets down. And so I think that there's a lot of advanced planning we could be doing for when the quarantines are over, and when people do eventually start getting back on the road, you could be one of the first artists ready to do that. So if anybody does want some information or like examples of the templates that I use for hiring people, you can obviously talk to Martin, but I also have my own little set that I use for myself, and I love to share that information. So email me at galenlee.com, and I will send you kind of how we plan our tours. The other thing I'm thinking about while we're home is just how to stay in people's minds. Recording at home is something that I had never actually done because I felt like, well, I'll leave the recording part to the professionals, but obviously I'm not going to be going into the studio for a very long time, and so I upgraded enough equipment on the cheap end, but like still good enough to do real recording at home, and that's what I'm going to be working on for creatively, is getting recordings out there. And so, yeah, there's so many things we could be doing, and that's the one thing I've been grateful. I don't know if you feel this way, Martin, but even despite ups and downs and like the depression that's kind of reared its head occasionally here, I mean, there's a lot of changes and it's definitely hard, but I love being a creative person because a home time like this, I will never get bored. Like, there are so many projects I could do. It's actually a little overwhelming, and I have to scale it back and be like, okay, what am I going to do right now? Instead of like, oh my gosh, there's like 1,000 projects I could pursue. And so there's a lot that you can do if you're creative and doing it at home, and it helps to keep you focused and grounded, and gives you some way to put your energy and stress into that's positive. And so yeah, so being an things that I think are most important for you at home to know is that just keep abreast of disability issues, like kind of know what is going on. If you can, I will put in the links, I'll put in the comments after I'm done, some places you can follow to kind of keep up. And if you find out that your state is presenting these really discriminatory policies, you can call your senators. That's what I did. There's places that you can follow up. And then the other thing is if you do need a job and you have to get out, something like Instacart is a lifesaver for me. Like I don't go grocery shopping anymore. And I am so grateful to the people who delivery jobs. I like give them the biggest tip that I possibly can, and I say thank you like 8,000 times because I don't want to. As I said, I don't feel like I would fare well if I got COVID. A little tiny bit more background on that is when I was 21, I had respiratory failure. So they didn't know why. It turned out I had undiagnosed asthma and they didn't know it. So I went in not being able to breathe. My oxygen level was low. Very similar things that what would actually happen if I had COVID, right? So I went in. The doctor came in. I was unconscious, but my mother was there. And he took one look at me and said, "Oh, she's so small. There's nothing I'm going to be able to do. You should say your goodbyes." And that's what he told my parents. And so luckily my mom had the presence of mind to be like, she has bone disorder. That seems unreasonable to just write her off immediately. So she got a second opinion, and that doctor said, well, if any patients I saw had those symptoms, I would prescribe prednisone. And he's done that though, right? Obviously. And she's like, no, no, he hasn't done anything. So she got this other doctor to prescribe prednisone, and I recovered 24 hours later. But discrimination does exist in the healthcare system, especially when people don't understand, which is something I truly believe at the bottom of my soul is that disability is not inherently a negative thing. We're all going to get old and we're going to die, right? Our life, our health is not going to be optimal for our entire life. And disability to me is not like a good, bad, you have it, you don't. It's a spectrum. And it's not positive or negative. It's just the way you present in the world. Some people are male, female, trans. Some people are different ethnic backgrounds. Some people are short, tall. Like, I mean, I personally feel disability is just another form of diversity, and that a lot of good comes in the world when you support all forms of diversity, including disability, rather than seeing it as inherently negative. But unfortunately, a lot of doctors don't see any diversity in health as positive, right? And so they just automatically write it off as, well, that person's life must be terrible. I'm going to work to save someone's life who is quote unquote or valuable or normal or whatever it is. But disability is diversity. So for me, every life really matters. I want to talk a little bit before we get to questions. Specifically, my identity as a disabled person, like I have so many interests, right? Like I love music, I love languages, I have a lot of friends and family that are really dear to me. Disability doesn't consume my whole life, but when I started touring, I realized that it is a true part of my identity, and I didn't realize how much I cared about like making sure the world understands this idea of disability as diversity. Um, the accessibility in the arts piece is kind of how I want to end my talk before we get to questions, because as I started touring, I realized that I think there's two reasons people like Martin who care, who give a crap. Like Martin actually cares about these issues, and he probably would have cared 30 years ago if he had realized they were a problem, right? I mean, I would hope so. I'm guessing that you would have. The thing is a lot of people don't realize there are so many barriers for people with disabilities. Like they think, oh, there's curb cuts, everything's fine. But then they get deeper into the situation and they realize that, oh, venues aren't accessible. Oh, there's job discrimination. Oh, people with disabilities are like way more likely to be in poverty. Oh, people with disabilities are way more likely to be sexually abused. There's a lot of real, real social inequalities still active regarding disabled people, right? Like, so our society has not done a great job of truly enforcing the ADA so that people with disabilities can live a life that's totally equal. We just haven't been enforcing it. And I started wondering, why is that, right? Like, why doesn't anyone else know all these things that I face on a daily basis, unless I talk about them, right? Like, why is it that they just like are floored when they realize how inaccessible the world is? Doesn't anybody know that, you know? And I realized there's two things going on. One is that disability education is not taught in schools. I can't see all of your hands right now, but I know just from all the conferences I've done, people don't learn about it K through 12. Some people learn about it in college because they major in disability studies or they go into vocational rehab or social work, but a lot of people don't do those fields, right? They need to be learning about it K through 12 so that we are aware of the barriers that still exist and also talking about solutions to fixing them. And we're not doing that. As a society, overwhelmingly, people are not learning about disability history, disability rights. When you're bored someday, Google the symbol for sit-ins or watch the movie Crip Camp. Crip Camp, I cried through the whole thing basically, I think, but it's made by the Michelle and Barack Obama have a film production company called Higher Ground, and they put out their first film was Crip Camp, and it's about a camp for kids with disabilities that ended up producing some of the leading disability rights advocates, and it talks about their journey from being teenagers at this radical punk camp. I mean, this camp, Martin, you would have loved that camp. I would have loved that camp. Everybody would have loved that camp. It's like this punk kind of like fringe camp that inspired kids to go and change the world. It's such a beautiful film, and we didn't learn about that stuff in school. You have to learn about it outside of school right now, which is a shame. The other thing is that we don't see disability depicted in our culture enough. So the reason I care so much about accessibility in the arts is partly I want other artists not to have to face the same crap that I do all the time. It's really hard and it's frustrating, and also technically not legal either. You know, there's a lot of issues going on where we need to be more inclusive in the art, right? So it's frustrating, and I want more disabled artists to do it easier, but also I want people to see disabled artists so that they actually us when they're doing more boring things like hiring their next secretary. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we need to have disability as part of the culture that's really represented so that we can be in people's minds as a part of society that matters and counts and needs to be included. And I think the culture is a big way to shape it. I mean, we can't deny that we are all here because we believe that culture has power to change the world. And I think disability is a part of that culture. So there's 5 things I think that would make the arts more accessible, and then I'll turn it over to questions. The first is that I think educating kids how to play music with disabilities. Those kids need the chance to learn. As I said, I had a cool teacher. She helped me learn, but a lot of people get told, no, you can't do this. That's not how you hold a violin. You can't hold your bow that way. Educate kids. This goes for any kind of music education. I mean, Wendy, I don't know how much you're working with. There's a recording studio out of Chicago that had been started, designed primarily for blind musicians so that they could like navigate the studio. There's a lot of cool things happening, but any arts organization could be incorporating disabled kids into their work. It doesn't have to just be a disabled kid art group. It can be any group, right? The next piece is holding any kind of festival, any kind of community choir, any kind of open mic, bare minimum. And in 2020, make sure that place is accessible. Make sure people can get in the door and use the bathroom and get to the stage. I mean, we're in 2020. The law has been around for 30 years. I always ask people how many of you have moved houses in the last 30 years? Most people raise their hands. Most people don't live in the same house for 50 years. A few people do, right? But most don't. And I always say, if you have moved in the last to better suit your needs, businesses can move. If they're not able to afford the accommodations that they need, if they can't afford that elevator, I get it. Elevators are like $100 grand. They could start looking for a more accessible space to operations in. I know there's nostalgia involved with like, oh, we've been here since 1847, but in reality, be inclusive. 20% of the population has some sort of disability. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Those can be your customers. And if you say, hey, customers, we care about you, we want to be inclusive, and we're going to move so that you can come to our shop, I can tell you if I were, I'd probably cry and then I would go to that business. Like, not that hard. The bar is so low right now for inclusion in business that, like, just do it and then you'll see that people will support you. I would like to hope, and I think from what I've read in the comments, that some people here are deaf and are utilizing this ASL service that Martin provided, because if you advertise, hey, we have ASL, what person who used ASL wouldn't want to come to this conference as opposed to one where they won't be included in the same way? So inclusion is important. The next thing is venues. So again, if you're an artist but you're not disabled, you can still be a catalyst for change. You can choose to play only at accessible venues. That's the decision I eventually had to make, because I would be going to venues for the second or third time, and every time they would say, oh yeah, it'd be nice if we had a ramp, but we're going to lift your chair up. And finally, like the third time in, I was like, you know, it's not going to change if I keep letting them lift my wheelchair up, which is, by the way, 300 pounds. It's a very heavy wheelchair. It's not safe for me. It's not safe for my chair. It's not safe for the staff to be doing that kind of lifting anyways. And also, it sends a very negative message, I feel, to performers, potential performers with disabilities, if they have to watch me get put on the stage on the ground and then somebody lifts my chair up and it's a very ugly, like, non graceful affair. Unless they're Beyonce, you're probably not being carried up onto the stage. Most artists walk up the stage themselves, right? I want to be able to have the agency to go up on the stage and just perform like anybody else. And so it wasn't sending the message that I wanted. So eventually I made a rule that every place I played, a ramp to the stage, or I was going to play on the floor, because I personally don't want to have, want people to have to see that. It feels like inequality. And so by playing on the floor, it's a very subtle way to point out, hey, this venue doesn't have a ramp stage, without me having to say anything or embarrass them. But the audience can tell. They're like, whoa, why isn't she on the stage? Oh, how would she even get up there? I get it. You know what I mean? That's kind of the process that happens. The other thing that you can do to make your events more accessible is things like captioning and ASL, or lyric books. There's a lot of ways, you know, it's about these baby steps. If you're a big agency and you can afford it, you really should have ASL at all your concerts. You should have a captioner at all your. If you can afford to do that with a few VIP ticket prices, like, it's not that expensive. I personally would never make any money right now if I had ASL at every event. Unfortunately, that's just the way I would actually make $0. But whenever I play at a college, and they can afford it, I definitely have them doing ASL. And then when I make more money, that's the very first thing I'll do. But there are some ways to do DIY accessibility things. A lyric book, as I said before, is very helpful. Martin and I have been talking about that forever. Oh, that's my phone. Terrible. Okay, Martin and I have been talking about a lyric book forever, and I need to get on that. But what I have done occasionally is printed my lyrics and just had a packet of lyrics printed in the back, and people who are hearing impaired or just have trouble focusing on auditory things, they have appreciated having the lyrics in front of them. The other thing you can do is a PowerPoint captions. So what you would do is you would have all the lyrics one line on a PowerPoint slideshow, and then you'd have someone in the back just clicking as you went through the lyrics. Again, this is not ADA, like, this is the way you should always do it. This is like, if you're a DIY artist and you have no money, think about how you can be creative to be accessible. That is the kind of stuff that we can all be doing. You don't have to be disabled to do any of this stuff. You can be a part of the solution, even if you're totally able-bodied. And then the last two things is, first of all, representation. As I said, 20% of people are disabled, right? That's a lot of people. 20% of the people we see in festivals or on stage are not disabled yet. And so how can we make that ratio more true to real life? I think that that's something that we can be focusing on if we're hiring our opening acts, if we're doing an art show, like all these things. Try to think about diversity to include disability. And in 2020, you wouldn't have a festival of white dudes. You just wouldn't anymore. That's just not the way the world works, which is fine. I think it's good to have diversity, like, and include disability in that idea of diversity. The last thing is media. How do we talk about disabilities? The last thing I want to end on, because I believe that disability is diversity, I do not believe that it is negative. And so, therefore, when I read articles about myself that are like, she is a victim of osteogenesis imperfecta, she suffers from brittle bones disease, she's a wheelchair, these are all real terms. Or my favorite, least favorite, was didn't look like she was going to be able to do much with her life until she found music. Like, what? I was like, what? That's not accurate. Like, what are you talking about? So, the way we talk about artists with disabilities says a lot about how we feel about that disability. So, if you're a writer or if you're just making an Instagram post, whatever, think about the words you're using. They should not have negative connotations when you're talking about disability. If you have questions about how someone wants you to refer to them, it's okay to ask too. A lot of people have said, how do you want me to talk about your disability? The reason I knew NPR Music people were cool is the very first day before they announced that I won, they said, how do you want us to talk about your disability? That is all you need to do, because I'm going to tell you what I truly like, how I feel like how I want it represented. And that's important, because it's important to own a narrative when it's been maligned for generations, right? When there's been a really negative message about your existence, think about how much of a bummer it would be. And this is something that I hadn't realized until I started reading more from disability rights advocates, but it does drain on you to hear everybody talk about your life as sucking. Like, as like, she suffers from this, she was never able to do this. And I'm like, well, but I actually like my life. Like, FYI, I enjoy my life. I've done a lot of really cool things, and even if I never leave our hand, I've done enough cool things already in the last 4 years that like are sustaining me for the future. Like, we have done a lot of cool things, and I enjoy being alive. And even people I know with different disabilities maybe aren't able to get out, they still enjoy their lives. Statistically, people with disabilities rate their quality of life as equal to anyone else. It's the people on the outside that rate their quality of life as horseshit, right? It's not us. We're not like, our lives suck. It's other people saying your life must suck. And so that has to change. We need to understand that people can enjoy life in many different circumstances. We don't, it doesn't have to look the same. Again, disability is diversity. Diversity of lived experience is also a valuable thing.
So, wow, Galen Lee, she's so fierce, right? And what can I say about involving yourself with a wider community? Being around Galen changes how I think about things. And just, my goodness, she came out to do some shows with us on tour last year, 2 years ago, 2019. And, you know, between the agent and the venue, the band and the venue, there'll be some correspondence going backwards and forwards. We want tequila, whiskey, vodka, and brandy and beer. And then the venue will say, well, you're not getting the brandy and the tequila, but you'll have the whiskey. And there's a little negotiation goes on. And sometimes if it goes backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, you think like, oh, this is hard work. But just before the tour started in 2019, Galen was like, just as she said on that panel, that session, there's a couple of places I might not be able to play. because they don't have a ramp. They don't seem to be prepared to rent a ramp. You know, I said, well, would you include me on these threads? Because sometimes, not always, but sometimes having me on a thread, I think people might say, oh God, we better deal with this. Otherwise, Martin will be on the phone and it's going to turn into a thing. And so she included me on this thread. And it was a mile long. Her emails were 3 pages of here's some helpful tips on this, and here's my viewpoint on this. And perhaps have you thought about buying this kind of a ramp or pooling with these other 4 venues in your area so that you could share this ramp between the 4 venues and it could become a profit center. And I just have so much respect for her energy level. And if that is that documentary, was that Crip Camp that she was, yeah, that was really great. It's one of those documentaries where they made it and then they go back and visit afterwards. That was, I'd never heard of it either, and it was really good to watch. So we'll let Galen play us out after our last just 15 minutes with Michael Anthony Alago. I've known Michael for a long time. He was at the Ritz in New York City when PIL played there behind a screen, the only show in a 5-year span that I didn't do with them. He was involved with Elektra Records when PIL signed with Elektra, 84, and was a really interesting part of our scratch and sniff. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I'm just smelling the scratch. Wow. Olfactory senses. Was a really interesting part of our scratch and sniff MMX3. And has done an awful lot. I can highly recommend his book. Also, Who the F is That Guy? This is a terrific documentary about his life made by Drew Stone, who's also been a terrific panelist for us too. So let's finish this up with Michael Alago. And I'll ask Molly to go straight from Michael into Galen's songs for the end. Thank you so much for being a part of MMX and part of these online sessions that we do. Thank you to the students who've worked hard on this. And thanks to Molly Compton for mastering StreamYard. And well, I think mastering is kind of a big word, really. Bumbling through a StreamYard experience. So there's more events coming up. I'm going to be doing a reprise of my South by Southwest panel from, the virtual, I was going to say from 2 years ago, the virtual one from just maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. So thanks for joining us. Thanks to our students. And let's end with Michael Anthony Alago.
My first job in the music business was started in 1980 when I walked into the Ritz, which was a nightclub on East 11th Street. In more modern days, people know that venue as Webster Hall. I was 19 years old. I was going to the School of Visual Arts. And it's a beautiful Art Deco building from the 20s. And remember, it's 1980. It's the advent of MTV. This club was opening. It was a video club. And I asked for a job. And Jerry said, well, do you have a resume? And I looked at him because kid from Brooklyn, I really didn't have any idea what a resume was. And he thought that was funny. So he called me up to his office, even though you didn't ask me all this, Martin, but I'm on fire today, as you can tell. So he called me up to his office and He said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. I want to be in the music business. He said, do you play anything? I said, no, but I go out every single night. And we started talking about music, all kinds of music, from the Great American Songbook in the 1930s to present day and what was going on in the New York underground scene. He said, I like you. I'm going to give you a job here at the Ritz. You're going to answer my phone. You're going to go get my lunch, and you're going to open my mail. And I was in heaven, because when this is a young kid from Brooklyn who always said, I'm going to be in the music business. And I had no plan B. And I was 19 years old, and this was the beginning. I had already seen Metallica twice, once at Lemoore, once at the Stone in San Francisco. And when I saw them at the Stone in San Francisco, I gave Lars my card. I mean, I never looked like this. I look like this all the time. So back then, I certainly didn't look like a record executive. I probably had a Misfits or a Plasmatics t-shirt on. And he said, you're an A&R person at Time Warner at Elektra Records? I said, yes. So fast forward, I let John Zazula know I don't want to sign Raven. I wanted to sign Metallica. That phone conversation did not go well at all. But he knew that we both had our best interests for Metallica, but I could do on a grand scale because I worked for a major corporation, what he couldn't do. So his business, in a nutshell, his business affairs talked to our business affairs, and everybody walked away satisfied. All of that occurred around August of 1984, when Metallica were part of a triple act bill at the Roseland Ballroom on West 52nd Street in New York City. They were the middle act, and I talk about this in my documentary, Who the Fuck Is That Guy? The Fabulous Journey of Michael Alago. And I go backstage, they all look at me like I'm crazy. I'm a little more than tipsy. So I'm hugging everybody and kissing everybody. And Lars says to James, this is Michael Alago from Elektra. And they all stopped what they were doing. And they're looking at me like, this is the guy we're entrusting our lives with. And I was like, yes, that's me. And you know what? The rest is history. That's the short version.
Okay. So.
Yes.
Yeah. So after Metallica comes who?
Oh, well, I was on a bit of a heavy metal roll. So after Metallica, I signed Metal Church and Flotsam and Jetsam, and then Dawkins, A&R person, left Elektra, so I had to, by default, become Dawkins A&R person. At some point, Bob knew that I was someone who could handle all styles of music. So at one point he called me into his office. He said, I signed a young lady from Boston. Her name is Tracy Chapman, and you are her A&R person. She had started her record already with David Kirschenbaum. So I would just pop into the studio to hear what the track sounded like. I was there for the mixing. I mastered the album, and I was really instrumental in putting that packaging together of her in that sepia-toned picture with her head tilted to the right, and it's a very quiet, atmospheric picture, and it felt like the album. At some point in 1985, I hooked up with John Lydon again, and I signed him to make a record. He made a record called Album with Bill Laswell. Hold that thought 1 minute. It just happens to be right here, just like coinky dinky.
Do you have the reissue?
No, is there a reissue?
Yeah, there's a reissue.
Okay, no. Anyway, so this was the album that we made at Elektra. And, the campaign was album, cassette, poster, blah, blah, CD, genius. So, generic. It looked like, the cornflakes box or something like that. The record was fabulous. There were all session musicians on it. I knew that John had these 2 records that Virgin were not putting out in the US and Canada, Live in Tokyo, and This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get. So I picked them up for the States. About a year and a half passed, and the records really aren't selling, and he had a major, major deal. And the powers that be in corporate said it just wasn't cost effective to keep him. Now keep in mind, and I'll end right here. I know John 40 years now, and we've never had a bad word with each other. Believe you me.
And I had 5 years in that band, and it's sad to me that John and I were like brothers at one point. We made a few albums together and toured the world and went through a bunch of ups and downs.
Sure.
But it's tough, to leave a band. I don't imagine it can be ever be seen as anything less than a betrayal. That's fair enough. We talked about the documentary. I did want to mention your book.
Sure.
The documentary is it's really well made. There's definitely a vibe and an energy to it.
Oh, sure.
There is a much more still calm
Mm-hmm.
in this book, which I've really been appreciating.
Well, you're reading a book and you don't catch my energy. It's not an audio book. So you're reading stories about artists and about New York City and about alcoholism and recovery and AIDS and gratitude and my mom. And so it definitely has a different tone. And it's, me and my mom, Brooklyn, 1960. I was always dressed up like that too. But yes, there's a certain rhythm in the documentary because I'm like a train going crazy and I'm always energetic. And then you put Cyndi Lauper and James Hetfield and John Lydon and Phil Anselmo from Pantera in there, and it just amps the whole documentary up in a fantastic way.
Well, I thought...
And yes, that's my book over there, wherever you were showing it. Anyway, it's called, I just, I have to do this and be a little shameless. It's called I Am Michael Alago, Breathing Music, Signing Metallica, Beating Death, and you can get it for $20. I'm cheap, at Amazon.com.
And it's in there's a link in the chat already.
Ah, wonderful, thank you.
It struck me, that
yes, please.
The Nina Simone chapter felt like almost a movie in itself.
Yeah, it's probably about 22 pages in the book.
So she was obviously troubled. I think you described her, or other people had described her as just completely impossible.
Sure.
Why would you accept that challenge?
Yeah, sure. I realized early on in my A&R career, I only wanted to deal with greatness. And I felt that I knew what greatness was all about. I had heard Nina's voice at a very young age at my dad's sister, my Aunt Jenny's home. She would be playing Isaac Hayes, Curtis Mayfield, Johnny Mathis, Nina Simone. And that voice just stuck with me at 13 years old. And when I started buying vinyl, I bought a bunch of her records. Fast forward, she is my all-time favorite artist. I don't think there's anybody greater than her on the planet. If, when people would joke around and they say, well, you're on a desert island, and what 5 records would you bring? I would probably only bring Nina Simone records, and I would be the happiest camper in the whole wide world. She was a tough cookie to deal with. She was troubled. She was bipolar. She drank with her medications the same way I did. But she would, and you can't toss this word that I'm about to say around too often because it just dilutes it. But she really was a genius. She was genius. She was part of the civil rights movement in the 60s. She marched with Dr. King. She wrote a song in the 60s called Mississippi Goddamn, and it's a fantastic anthem to the civil rights movement. Fast forward, she made lots of records for Philips and RCA. She was a person who knew how to interpret other people's songs. So when she did Here Comes the Sun by George Harrison, when she reinterpreted Jacques Brel, Ne me quitte pas. When she sang Bob Dylan's Just Like a Woman and Just Like Tom Thumb's Blues. You would think, if you didn't know those other artists, that she wrote that material because she got to the heart of the matter and made it something stupendous. I didn't have a better word than that, but that's an okay word. None of that bothered me. I loved the whole idea that she was trouble, and I ate it all up. We stayed friends for the last 15 years of her life. She loved me because I was way younger than her, and she knew of the great love and respect that I had for her. We made one album with a 50-piece orchestra called The Single Woman in 1993. And 10 years later, in 2003, she passed away.
I mean, the whole book is lays a lot bare.
Sure.
The communication between you and Nina, and you know, I think it was the New York Times that said.
Yes, it was a very big article that James Gavin in the New York Times wrote. I'm listening, but I want to just find something for you again.
Was it the Times that said that she was the only thing standing in her own way, or somebody else?
Something. I mean, it's paraphrasing, but basically, she was always the only one standing in her own way, and that was because of just a lot of failed marriages, and like I just said, bipolar, alcoholism. In the later parts of her life, she had breast cancer. She had strokes, and nothing was the same. But I just loved her so much, so much.
There's a scene on the Tonight Show, which sounds like a nightmare.
It was.
Wanting to get paid, but then there's a scene where was it the same weekend where there's a bunch of people in her room and she's like, everybody out, and you get in the bathtub, in a bubble bath with her.
Sure, it's a fun story in the book. It's July 1999. Nick Cave from the Birthday Party is doing a series of concerts called the Meltdown Series. So, it was Elvis Costello one night, the Bad Seeds one night, Suicide another night, and Nina Simone. So I go to her hotel with 24 white roses and a bottle of champagne. She sees me. She was getting her hair cornrowed, and she says, "Everybody out." She called me Sugar Lips. And she's on my Sugar Lips. And I said, "Honey, I'm here." She said, "You know what? Let's take a bubble bath."
As you do.
With a legend. And I was like, okay. So I went in the bathroom to see if there were bubbles. I had to call concierge. I said, "Could you call the chemist," which is what they call them in the UK. "Can you call the chemist and get me bubbles?" Got the bubbles. She thought nothing of stripping down. I left my boxer shorts on. We brought the champagne into the bathtub, and we laughed like teenagers. And unfortunately, let's see, yeah, that was the last time I saw her in person. But what a way to go. All those other times, I was mostly in New York, and she was in the south of France.
Well, I just, I don't know, it seemed maybe I've worked with some people as well who have that cycle. And I certainly, I loved reading that. I'm enjoying the book a lot.
Oh, good. And for those of you who don't have the book yet, here's a great picture of me and Nina.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I have to say something to Tanya here. Tanya, I'd love to write a book about Nina Simone too. But if you Google, Michael Alago on YouTube, there's a whole bunch of interviews where I talk about, or the title is, Alago takes a bubble bath with a legend. And of course, it's Nina Simone. I was a really good A&R person, and that has nothing to do with ego. It's about like the job that I always wanted. I knew what good was, and I felt I knew what great was. And like I said, I'm only signing great. Great to me is somebody who is charming and charismatic and knows how to work an audience. And when you have all of that, the audience responds to you. Somebody who tells a great story, whether it's James Hetfield and Metallica telling his great story, or Tracy Chapman talking about a revolution or fast car. I loved artists who, like I said, who are that charismatic. And I felt like I knew who had that it factor. And it's a thing that you cannot buy. Rob Zombie has it in spades. You know, that charm, that charisma. You can't buy that kind of stuff. So I guess great storytelling, being that charismatic, having great material, those are the factors that determine whether I was signing somebody or not.
And I think Rob Zombie said himself in the documentary that they only basically they felt they had like one good riff.
He said Michael kept talking about this one damn riff that we had, and I think he signed us based on that riff. And I did, because I saw and heard the possibilities. I mean, it was really primal, and it was noise, and it was not really songs. I didn't care. I knew I could do something with them, and I did.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Martin. I love you. And I love you, Randy. And I don't know you yet, Wendy, but I love you too. And everybody here is doing such good work. So.
Oh my goodness, I thought we had a song from Galen to end. That was cruel and unusual. And I wish we'd had another 20 minutes with Michael Alago. What a blast. Okay, that's MMX4. Next will be MMX5, and I hope that will be on campus. The MMX2 that we'd planned for the beginning of the pandemic, we were going to do in Decatur, Illinois and Chicago, and have a kind of a day in Decatur, a day in Chicago. Maybe we'll do that. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for spending a bit of time with us. I hope you got some good information and positive vibes from all of that. Thanks to my students. Thanks to Millikin for letting me do all of this great stuff with my students. And thanks again to Shani Goss for the amazing graphics that she's provided us with. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. See you at MMX 5.